Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Douluo. I Level Up Alone. Chapter 41, Tiando City. There was a huge flow of people on Xingdu Avenue. As the imperial capital of the Tiando Empire, the bustle here was far from comparable to that of the small nodding city. As far as the eye could see, there were almost all human figures. To move even 1 meter, one had to find every possible opportunity. Get out of the way, get out of the way. Hurry up. Suddenly, a stern and rough shout came from the end of the avenue, and the sound of rapid horse hoofs sounded. Then, the flow of people began to become commotion, rushing towards both sides in panic. Some people didn't know why, but they were surrounded by the crowd, so they could only follow and move away from the street. More than a dozen riders rode past on the street, not paying attention to the civilians on the street who had not yet moved out of the way. If someone was too slow to move away, the rider would hit him with a whip, and for a moment, the wide avenue was covered with water. It showed a scene of chickens and dogs jumping around. Have you blinded me? I'll help you if you want to die. Get out of my way. The knight was wearing the clothes of the royal guards, and his aura was terrifying. A dozen knights led the way, surrounded by a young man who looked to be in his early 20s. The young man was dressed luxuriously and had an unruly expression. He looked disdainfully at the civilians who were getting out of the way, with a trace of disgust and disdain in his expression. To him, there is no difference between these civilians and ants. He can take their lives with just a few words. Who is this? I'm so disgusted. This guy is so crowded. Beside the street, the girl who was pushed by the crowd pouted her lips to express her dissatisfaction. The person in front of her took another step back, but she couldn't dodge. Her toes were stepped on and she twitched hard. However, the person in front of her suddenly let go. She was immediately at a loss. She stepped on the foot behind her and her slender ankle sprained. He tripped and fell backwards, crashing into the arms of a young man. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. The girl quickly stood up and apologized to the boy behind her. It's okay. The young man was very kind, shook his head with a smile, and explained to the girl, you must have just arrived in Tiando City, right? That person is Shui Bang, the fourth prince of the Tiando Empire. He travels quite domineeringly on weekdays. Most people don't dare to mess with you. The girl blinked and looked at the young man. She found that the young man in front of her had delicate cheeks and a pair of eyes as deep as the starry sky under the broken hair. He was wearing a silk and satin dress with gold threads. He seemed to have an extraordinary status. Thank you. The girl stepped away from the boy's arms, a blush appeared on her cheeks, and the warmth in her waist was still there. Her eyes were slightly averted, not daring to look into those deep eyes. Haha, young man, it seems that you are very familiar with Tiando City. Hearing this, the old man on the side stroked his beard and looked at the boy and girl with a smile. That's not true. I just came here a few days ago and have already found out everything about Tiando City. The young man smiled, shook his head at the old man and said, when I first arrived in Tiando City, there were as many nobles as dogs here. The teacher is running all over the place, so naturally he wants to find out who can be provoked and who cannot be provoked, so as not to bump into any noble person in the future and end up badly. There are as many nobles as dogs. Soul masters are running all over the place. The old man couldn't help but paused while stroking his beard, then smiled. The girl on the side also burst out laughing. This was the first time that the two of them heard someone address a noble and a soul master like this. These two people are regarded as noble beings on the entire continent. In the eyes of ordinary people, they are almost unattainable and can only look up to them all their lives. Every civilian would bend down involuntarily when facing them, not daring to take any offense. Not to mention the verbal ridicule. He blatantly compared nobles to dogs, and implicitly compared soul masters to, well, some kind of wild animal. This kind of behavior is really treasonous in the eyes of others. From this sentence, it can be seen that the young man actually does not care about bumping into the so-called nobleman. Obviously, either the young man has an extraordinary status, or he is also a soul master and has the confidence to not be afraid of being troubled. Suddenly, the old man thought that this time was the beginning of school season, and the boy in front of him could be the same. Young man, I see that you are not very old. Are you coming to Tiando City to study? The old man did not feel offended by the young man's words. Instead, he asked kindly, could it be Tiando Royal Academy? No, I have a first-level innate soul power and a mutated martial soul. The road of being a soul master will not go far. The young man cupped his hands and said humbly, therefore, my family allowed me to enter Yuexuan to study etiquette. The boy was none other than Cheng Xiao, who was sent to Yuexuan by his uncle to study. His second soul ring is a 1,000-year soul ring. Before he can find a more reliable force to join him, it is better to hide his strength for the time being. Otherwise, he will have no roots and no one, and everyone will want to take a bite of him and explore him. The secret about him. Although with the shadow soul beast he now controls, he is no longer afraid of some prostitutes coming to find him, but instead of spending energy on dealing with those greedy people, it is better to hide his strength and avoid trouble. When the old man heard this, he secretly thought it was a pity. The girl puffed up her cheeks and looked slightly disappointed. She thought she could enroll in school with someone. Old man, is your granddaughter preparing to enter Tiando Royal Academy? Cheng Xiao gleaned some information from the old man's words. Well, she is too lazy, but fortunately she barely meets the enrollment requirements of Tiando Royal Academy. The old man said with a smile. Grandpa. When the girl heard this, she stamped her feet coquettishly. Oh, then your granddaughter is quite talented. Cheng Xiao complimented casually, not taking it seriously at all whether she was lazy or not. This is true for all elders. If you verbally say that your children are not good enough, if you really take it seriously and go along with it, you may make others unhappy again. However, Tiando Royal Academy is not in the city. Where are you? Cheng Xiao asked slightly. I just arrived here and I'm not familiar with it yet, so I came here to take a look around. The old man said, there's nothing in the way. Let's visit an old friend by the way. Do you need any help? I've been here for a few days, so I'm somewhat familiar with Tiando City. Cheng Xiao asked. Cheng Xiao is not a warm-hearted person, he is a guy who has no profit and cannot afford to get up early. Although they only exchanged a few words, Cheng Xiao was able to analyze a lot of things. Tiando Royal Academy not only recruits students based on their grades, but also has certain requirements for status. Even if Shrek's entire academy went there, they would open their doors to welcome them. In fact, for ordinary people, Tiando Royal Academy has an invisible and intangible threshold. What's more, Cheng Xiao could tell from the old man's behavior that their status was definitely extraordinary. They didn't feel as embarrassed as ordinary people when they first arrived in a place. After hearing Shui Beng's identity, there was no envy or inferiority on their faces. Look. Obviously, the old man was not a bad person to interact with, so they didn't have much feeling about Shui Beng's identity. Such a person is worthy of his friendship. The old man touched his beard, narrowed his eyes slightly, and looked at Cheng Xiao, as if he was guessing Cheng Xiao's purpose. No one is naive enough to think that the whole world is full of kind-hearted people. If you meet a random person on the street and ask if you need help, you will instinctively suspect that he or she has some other purpose. The old man has lived for so many years and has met many people. Even if the young man in front of him looks younger than his granddaughter, it is still difficult to let go of his basic wariness. Cheng Xiao seemed to feel the old man's unintelligible gaze, and immediately said, Mister, don't get me wrong, I am the first to arrive in Tiando. Wandering alone in the city is sometimes quite boring on weekdays, so I want to make more friends. It doesn't mean anything else. Friend, the old man smiled and said nothing. On this continent, there are countless people who want to make friends with him but can't find a way. I don't know how many people are kneeling in front of the door without being able to meet him. Who can be called his friend on this continent? Don't you have a great reputation? The kid in front of you just met by chance, and you want to make friends with him. Seeing that the old man didn't respond, Cheng Xiao didn't know that the other man meant to refuse. He sighed in his heart. It seemed that he couldn't have a relationship with him. He had long noticed that the old man was different from ordinary people, so he wanted to make friends with him. He might have a chance to connect with him and find a force he could rely on. Cheng Xiao doesn't force things. He knows that it is very difficult to build his own network of people in a place he is unfamiliar with. He can still bear this setback. It's just an unintentional intervention. It doesn't matter whether it succeeds or not. The real focus of his plan lies in Yuexuan. It's my fault. Cheng Xiao was about to say goodbye and leave. Suddenly, the girl on the side gently tugged at the corner of the old man's clothes. The old man glanced at his granddaughter, feeling slightly amused that his granddaughter actually begged for mercy for this boy. Then he thought that she was wandering around with him, and she really didn't have many friends of the same age, so he felt soft and agreed. Okay, it just so happens that my granddaughter has never been to Tiando City. Since you said that you are familiar with it, you might as well go with us and tell her about Tiando City. Chang Xiao's words of farewell were suddenly stuck in his throat. He glanced at the girl who was half hiding behind the old man, and saw that her ears were reddish, her head was buried, and her toes were making awkward circles on the ground. Did you take the wrong route? Should we start with girls first? Oops, confused. Many thoughts flashed through his mind, and Chang Xiao said happily, it's an honor. In the next half day, Chang Xiao took his grandfather and grandson to wander around Tiando City, introducing the girl to the many attractions and features of Tiando City. Fortunately, Chang Xiao had learned a lot about Tiando City in the past few days, so he was quite proficient in explaining it and didn't look like an outsider at all. In addition to being a human being in two lives, there were many jokes about past lives interspersed during the explanation, which made the girl laugh. Along the way, the old man who was listening silently also had a new view of Chang Xiao. He had been to Tiando City many years ago, but he had never understood it in such detail. This kid was a bit crooked. At noon, the old man said, let's find a place to eat and go shopping in the afternoon. The girl was still unfinished, but she touched her somewhat dry belly, nodded, and agreed, okay. Then I will take you to eat at a particularly famous restaurant, which must be very suitable for your taste. Chang Xiao said. After realizing the importance of girls, Chang Xiao focused his strategy on girls. Therefore, he deliberately inquired about the girls' preferences on the road. That's when it comes in handy. Chang Xiao led the way and they came to a restaurant. After introducing a few famous dishes, the three of them took their seats after ordering their meals. I wonder where the old gentleman's friend's home is. Do you need me to lead the way? After sitting down, Chang Xiao took the opportunity to ask. The old man shook his head and refused decisively. No, my old friend doesn't like strangers, so I won't bother you anymore. Chang Xiao didn't dwell on this and turned to chatting about other things. The dishes were also served one after another at this time. How is it? Is it delicious? Chang Xiao asked with concern. He finally saw clearly that it was difficult to make progress from the old man, and the breakthrough point had to be the young girl. Yes. The girl bit her chopsticks and nodded shyly, obviously not expecting Chang Xiao to remember her preferences. Just eat it if you like. Chang Xiao smiles like a fox. Isn't it easy to deal with a little girl? Just as he was about to increase his favorability, suddenly, a series of smashing sounds came from next door. Ping 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 pong. The three of them were stunned and followed the sound, only to see a little girl smashing a table of dishes on the ground. Everyone's eyes in the entire restaurant were focused on her. Bah, bah, bah. What kind of food is this? It tastes so bad. The girl was well dressed, but quite unruly. After smashing the food on the ground, she stood on the table and cursed arrogantly, this is worthy of the title. Tian do Kawei. Bah, even my dogs won't eat it. Everyone in the restaurant suddenly looked unhappy. Chang Xiao also frowned, put down his chopsticks, and lost his appetite. What does it mean? Even if your dog doesn't eat it, are we worse than your dog? Everyone was instantly disgusted and cursed at the girl. What do you know about movies, you girl? Don't eat it if you don't know how to eat it. Which wild girl is so arrogant when she goes out? Can't she be beaten? No one is pampering you outside. Humph, who is your master? I would like to see which family's dog eats so well. Is it possible that he eats delicacies from all over the world every day? Facing the accusations from everyone, the girl was not afraid at all. She glanced sideways at everyone. My dog eats soul beast meat every day, can you afford it? The man choked and his face turned red. At this moment, the store owner reacted. The chef led a group of burly men, surrounded the girl, and said fiercely, little girl, are you here to smash the signboard? Don't even look at where this place is. This is the palace. Even if it should taste bad, it still tastes bad. The girl wrinkled her nose at the chef and made a face. The chef almost lost his temper, pointed at the little girl and shouted angrily, take her down, take her down, take her down for me. etc. Suddenly, there was a low shout outside the door, and after the words fell, a group of soldiers in armor filed in, and a handsome man with a very tall appearance strode into the hotel. The moment she saw the man, Cheng Xiao's pupils shrank. Why was it her? The entire hotel was silent. The soldier stood near the door with his head held high. The iron-blooded aura emanating from his body made everyone's scalp numb, and no one dared to make a sound. What's more, he recognized the man and couldn't help but swallow his saliva, with cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. The little girl standing on the table rolled her eyes like a ghost when she saw the man for the first time, jumped off the table and slipped towards the window. Wrong, don't run away. I've blocked the windows. When the man saw this, he was helpless. What sea? Where is the sea? Nonsense. Wrong. Ning wrong. No wonder he is so delicate. It's not surprising at all that it's Ning wrong, the little witch. As the little princess of the Seven Treasures Glazed sect, it is no exaggeration to say that her family is extremely wealthy, especially with two titled Douluo who dote on her extremely. She can really run amok. Cheng Xiao looked at Ning wrong thoughtfully for a long time and remembered her in his mind. The Qibao Glazed sect was one of his inspection targets, so Ning wrong's behavior naturally had to be taken into consideration. After hearing the man's warning, Ning wrong froze, and immediately her shoulders slumped. She turned around and made a face at the man. Why did it come so fast? I haven't had enough fun yet. You. The man shook his head helplessly, waved and said, let's go, don't mess around, you've been out long enough this time. I will run farther away next time. Ning wrong curled her lips, but she still came to the man's side obediently. I'm really sorry. I will pay for all the losses caused by my junior sister today. The man looked at the store and apologized, then looked around at the diners. Sorry, everyone. I will pay for your consumption today. My junior sister. I'm ignorant and disturb everyone's enjoyment, so please bear with me. The man was gentle and elegant. Although he had the temperament of a man in a position of authority, his gestures did not show his strength. His words were like a breath of fresh air, which made all the diners feel much better. Some people who knew the man's identity did not dare to recognize him. If you talk too much, you can't wait to bury your head. Then I won't disturb you all. Seeing no one objected, the man smiled and prepared to leave with Ning wrong. Suddenly, in the peripheral vision, a figure broke into the line of sight. The man was stunned for a moment, then stopped, a trace of doubt appeared on his face, and he looked at the diner. The man seemed afraid to confirm. He frowned and recalled it carefully, and finally dug out a certain portrait deep in his memory. His eyes lit up and he hurriedly walked towards Cheng Xiao's table. I wonder if you are the saintly and benevolent Senior Yi. The man held a junior gift in his hand. Holy hands and benevolent heart. Leaf. Could it be Juxin Begonia? Yi Renxin. Cheng Xiao was stunned, feeling like 10,000 grass and mud horses were running past. He had imagined that the old man had an extraordinary status. Otherwise, why would he put so much effort into making friends? But I didn't expect it to explode like this. This is the top healing auxiliary soul master in the entire Douluo continent. If the entire auxiliary system is broken down, it can be roughly divided into 3 categories: food system, treatment system, and amplification system. Qibao Glazed Pagoda is the well-deserved number 1 martial spirit in the mainland in the amplification system, while Juxin Haidang is the number 1 in the treatment system. Martial spirit. Some people may not think that Juxin Haidang can be as famous as Qibao Glazed Pagoda. The healing system only heals the entire body, but Qibao Glazed Pagoda can maximize its strength and kill people with one blow, leaving you with no time to heal. However, compared to the 7 Treasures Glazed Pagoda, the appeal of Juxin Haidang is definitely not much weaker. Healing is not just for combat. Still after the battle. How many soul masters have been unable to advance their soul power for the rest of their lives due to hidden wounds left in battles? How many people died early due to hidden injuries? If there were top healing soul masters, how could they be like this? Not to mention anything else, if the fathers of Tang Xiao and Tang Hao had been treated with Juxin Haidang, how could they have been so easily sickened by qi and died from the recurrence of old diseases? Tang Hao had hidden wounds all over his body. If he had 9-hearted begonia, would he still need to force the hidden wounds into his hands and feet and break his arms and legs to survive? This is an effect that the Qibao Glazed Pagoda cannot achieve. As long as Juxin Haitang's soul master is here, it will be difficult to die. This saying circulating on the mainland is not just talk. As the saying goes, life-saving grace is repaid by a spring of water. Countless people have been saved by Juxin Begonia. Countless people remember this kindness and wait to repay the favor in the future. If it weren't for the fact that only 2 people could exist in Juxin Haitang at the same time, the inheritance would be prone to gaps. The Yi family would be able to call on a large number of soul masters to be loyal to them. Not to mention being comparable to the 7 Treasures Glazed sect, but establishing a large sect that far surpasses the next 4 sects would definitely be possible. No problem. No wonder the old man would politely refuse his deliberate friendship before. Why should he be friends with the number 1 healing soul master in the mainland? Cheng Xiao's thoughts turned sharply. No, he finally came across such a good opportunity, but he couldn't just let him slip away. Can't talk about friendship. I want it. The worst case scenario is that I kidnap your granddaughter. His eyes were slightly tilted and fell on the quiet girl beside him. A series of routines appeared in Cheng Xiao's mind. Cheng Xiao smiled at the corner of his mouth and his eyes curved into crescents. Yi Lingling was looking curiously at the man talking to her grandfather, completely unaware that there was a fox beside her who had already set his sights on her. Suddenly, as if a cold chill ran down her spine, Yi Lingling's delicate body trembled, and she raised her head blankly. Her eyes happened to collide with Cheng Xiao's piercing eyes. Her delicate and fair cheeks instantly turned red, and she shrank quickly. Neck, buried his head, bit his lower lip gently, and silently ate the white rice to hide the shame in his heart. Do you know me? Seeing the man coming straight towards her and even calling him by his name, Yi Renxin raised her eyebrows and asked. Who in mainland China knows the name of Senior? The man smiled. I wonder if I would be honored to invite Senior to pay a visit. Yi Renxin leaned back and looked at the man. This is the crown prince of the Tiando Empire, Shui Qinghe. He is also a disciple of Ning Fengji, the master of the Qibao Glazed sect. Seeing this, Cheng Xiao took the opportunity to introduce him and resolve the embarrassing situation. Shui Qinghe looked at Cheng Xiao, showed a kind smile, and nodded to express his gratitude. Fortunately, this young man saved the situation, otherwise the prince would have to introduce himself, which would be too embarrassing. Oh, it's you. I came to Tiando City and saw you once many years ago. You were only 3 or 4 years old at that time. Yi Renxin heard the elegant meaning and cooperated to ease the awkward atmosphere. It's been like this in the blink of an eye. He's grown so old that I, an old man, can't even recognize him. How is your father? I am honored to have you miss me, Senior. My father's health is deteriorating. I would like to ask you to visit me this time because I want to provide diagnosis and treatment for my father. Cheng Xiao's expression was a bit exciting, and he felt very absurd. Qian Runshui wanted to treat Emperor Shui Yi. What a joke. You probably want him to die, right? Immediately after thinking about it, Cheng Xiao realized that it was just an excuse to show filial piety, and at the same time, he could make friends with the number 1 healing soul master in the mainland, who had the same idea as himself. There's no need to go to your house. I'm going to visit an old friend and I don't want to be disturbed. Yi Renxin waved his hand and did not give him face because of his status as Prince Shui Qinghe. For him, the identity of the prince is not even as important as that of Ning Fengji's disciple, and even if Ning Fengji is here, he has the confidence to refuse if he is called Senior. That's it. If Senior has anything to say, you can send someone to the prince's mansion at any time to let him know, and I will do my best to help Senior solve your worries. Hearing this, Shui Qinghe sighed and said with regret, then I won't bother you too much. Senior, please use it slowly. Watching Qian Runshui, who was disguised as Shui Qinghe, leave, Cheng Xiao's eyes were unclear and many thoughts flashed through his mind. He originally wanted to gradually get in touch and make friends with Qian Runshui in Yuexuan through Shuikei's street, but he didn't expect that they would meet in this situation by chance. That's fine. Now that I have an impression, subsequent contacts will be much easier, and the various plans in my mind can be slightly changed, without having to follow the original plan step by step. He is not in a hurry to make a decision. The world is not as simple as imagined. According to his experience of more than 10 years, people in this continent have a very strong sense of hierarchy. If you want to join a certain noble or force, you may not even be able to find one. It's not that as soon as he shows the 1,000-year soul ring, someone will come to worship him and beg him to join the sect, nor is it that by spreading the news about the twin martial souls, he can directly enter the martial soul hall and become Bibi Dong's disciple. Anyone who can become a force is not a good person. Others are more likely to press for the secret of the second 1,000-year soul ring. The Wahan Hall is not monolithic. If the Enshrinement Hall and the Pope's Hall are not dealt with, then the people below must be monolithic. Juliana has been a saint for so long, and a new person wants to become Bibi Dong's disciple. Will the inherent factions agree to his intervention and break the existing pattern? Even if you don't consider these things, would Bibi Dong really accept male disciples? Except for Juliana, Yan and Xiaoyu were also good, but Bibi Dong did not accept them as disciples. Why? Perhaps you can guess something by connecting the secret room incident. I worshipped a male master, but he turned out to be a beast. If he accepts another male disciple, he will be a beast. Is it possible to come to the secret room again? Maybe Chang Xiao is overthinking, but he can't gamble. No one will reveal all their cards in front of an unfamiliar person or force from the beginning, which means that he will have no room to look back. If you lose the bet, the consequences will be disastrous. Therefore, if he wants to use the power of a certain force, he does not rush to the door and expose himself at once, but carefully contacts them many times until he understands their character and behavior before making a decision. Otherwise, they will most likely end up being used and then abandoned like the 4 domestic slaves. Some forces are really shameless. Entering Yuexuan is the easiest way to get in touch with Qian Runshui, which is one of his tentative goals. The Qibao Glazed Sect and Wuhan Palace ranked second, followed by a series of other forces. Yi Renxin, whom he met by chance, has naturally become his candidate for investigation. As for whether to choose Qian Runshui in the end, we still need to make a decision after getting in touch. I don't know if this woman has any other problems besides being in love. If he was just in love, he could still be saved. If the wall really couldn't be supported by the mud, then he could only choose from alternatives. There are many choices to make, so don't be too anxious. After regaining consciousness, Chang Xiao was about to continue eating, but Yi Renxin put down her chopsticks and sighed. Chang Xiao was startled and looked around, only to see the diners whispering and looking at their table vaguely. Soon Chang Xiao realized that his every move was under the gaze and guidance of others. How could he feel comfortable eating? Old sir, if you have no appetite, why not go to another place? Chang Xiao asked. I still remember that there is a good shop with very few people, so it won't disturb us. Chang Xiao used some tricks. Yi Renxin touched his beard, pondered for a while, and nodded. If he stays here for a long time, his identity will definitely attract a lot of people, and it will be troublesome to deal with them. Ah, why, it's delicious. Yi Lingling raised her head and blinked, her beautiful eyes filled with confusion. Take you to eat other delicious food. Chang Xiao stood up and held Yi Lingling's soft little hand, leading him out of the restaurant without any explanation. Let's go. The little hands are cold, the touch is very special, soft, and very small, people can't help but play with it. Yi Lingling's mind buzzed, and her whole delicate body became stiff. Only the words, "He held my hand," were left in her mind, and her ears flushed. She just followed Chang Xiao in a daze, following every step, like a little follower. The land was taken away. Yi Renxin followed behind, smiling and saying nothing. He wasn't too worried. The two of them were still young and far from the time to fall in love. My granddaughter has not had many friends since she was a child, so it would be nice to have someone to accompany her around Tiando City. Little did he know that Yi Lingling might not have any ideas and was just shy, but a little fox with a heart contained the soul of an adult. If Yi Lingling fell into his hands, she would be eaten up and wiped out sooner or later. Senior brother, who is that old man? Saint Hand Renxin. Is he very powerful? Ning Rongrong tilted her head, her moist eyes full of curiosity. That's Yi Renxin, the descendant of Juxin Haitang. Shui Qinghe said with a smile. She looked calm on the surface, but she was very worried in her heart. 9 Hearts Begonia. Ning Rongrong frowned. Martial spirit. Very powerful. Shui Qinghe was speechless, but just shook his head. You are still young, you will understand when you grow up. How to answer? Praising another auxiliary martial spirit in front of the 7 Treasures Glazed Pagoda. His identity is still Ning Fengji's disciple. If he really did this, people from the Qibao Glazed sect would probably call him a traitor in private. She's not that stupid yet. Ning Rongrong rolled her eyes and thought, "Ha, senior brother, just treat me like a child and coax me. When I get back, I'll go ask Dad." After Ning Rongrong was sent to the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile sect, Shui Qinghe stayed for a while longer and strengthened his relationship with the two titled Douluo Ning Fengji and Zhanggu before returning to Tiando City. In the prince's mansion. "Everyone, go down." Shui Qinghe waved his hand, looking slightly tired. After everyone left, two people with extremely powerful auras suddenly appeared in the room. With a wave of their hands, all the doors and windows were closed. "Everyone has left," one of them said in a hoarse voice. Shui Qinghe nodded, and a ray of light emitted from the center of his eyebrows. The light was only the size of a fingertip, but after it shot out from the center of his eyebrows, it quickly expanded, forming a thin film of golden light that covered Shui Qinghe. When the golden light dissipated, Shui Qinghe turned into a beautiful woman. The woman looked about 20 years old, with skin as good as snow, a straight nose, slightly slender eyes, and a fascinating face. There is a bit of majesty and holiness that makes people unable to think of blasphemy. "Young master." The two of them touched their chests and saluted. "Yi Renxin is coming to heaven." Qian Runshui opened her eyes, her beautiful eyes filled with solemnity. "Yi Renxin, why did he come to Tiando City?" Both of them changed their expressions. They were just about to implement that plan. If anything goes wrong with Emperor Shuiyi, he will definitely ask Yi Renxin to take action. Then their conspiracy may be directly exposed. "How about I kill him?" A fierce look appeared on one person's cheek. No matter how well Juxin Haitang can heal, without the protection of other soul masters, it will be difficult to block the attack of titled Douluo. He was confident that he would kill with one strike. Emperor Shuiyi lived too long. Ever since they replaced the real Shui Qinghe with Daozan, they thought that Emperor Shuiyi, who was not in good health, would return to the west soon and pass the throne to Qian Runshui, who was disguised as Shui Qinghe. But what no one expected was that this seriously ill Shuiyi would actually be alive until now. By now, they are tired of waiting. They came to Tiando City not to waste their time, but to steal the entire Tiando Empire. For this reason, the young master's cultivation has been delayed a lot. Can't wait any longer. They made a plan to gradually poison Emperor Shuiyi and send him back to the west as soon as possible. If executed smoothly, they will soon be able to capture one of the two great empires, thereby accelerating the great cause of unifying the Douluo continent. However, what they didn't expect was that at this critical moment, Yi Renxin, who could pull people back from the door of hell, came. If he were here, it would be difficult for Emperor Shuiyi to die. The existence of Yi Renxin is enough to ruin all their plans and even risk exposing them. Therefore, the Agouti Douluo proposed to kill Yi Renxin directly. However, this suggestion was opposed by Snake Spear Douluo. This is in Tiando City. If we take action, someone with a heart will definitely notice it. If we track down the young master, we will fall short. The Agouti Douluo's voice was very dull, mixed with a little dissatisfaction. "Then what do you think we should do?" Snake Spear Douluo pondered for a moment and looked at Qian Runshui. "Why don't we postpone the plan for a while? We can wait until Yi Renxin leaves Tiando City in the future. Then what if he doesn't leave? Do we just keep waiting?" Guillotine Douluo rolled his eyes. Qian Runshui's slender fingers as white as jade were tapping rhythmically on the armrest. She looked thoughtful. After a while, she slowly said, "Let's put the plan on hold for now. We have hidden it for so long. I have made so many arrangements and cannot fail at the last step." Yes, both of them were titled Douluo, but they were extremely respectful to Qian Runshui, stroking their chests and saluting. Qian Runshui lowered her eyes slightly, thinking about Yi Renxin's purpose of coming to Tiando City. She should find out clearly first. If she really can't wait until Yi Renxin leaves Tiando, then, don't blame her for being cruel. After finishing their second meal, Cheng Xiao and the other three walked around in the street to eat. Along the way, Cheng Xiao teased the introverted Yi Lingling, making her blush with embarrassment and hide behind Yi Renxin, not daring to show her face. Then he chatted with Yi Renxin all over the world, and his quite mature opinions did not make Yi Renxin feel uncomfortable at all. If it weren't for this kid occasionally teasing his granddaughter into running away shyly, revealing his youthful nature, Yi Renxin would have even thought that he was communicating with an adult who had been in business for many years. Speaking of which, the secret knowledge passed down in my family can also cure all kinds of diseases. If it were not difficult to use, I would definitely show off in front of the old gentleman. Seeing that the time was almost ripe, it was time to throw out the hook for fishing. Cheng urinates like a teenager. People generally show off, smugly. Oh, cure all kinds of diseases. Your family's martial spirit is also a healing one. Yi Renxin touched his beard and didn't feel dissatisfied. Of course not. Cheng Xiao shook his head. Anyone can learn it, no healing martial spirit is needed. You mean herbal medicine cures diseases, right? Haha, little Doyle, how can it be said to cure all diseases? Yi Renxin shook his head. Not everyone on this continent could afford a healing soul master, so there was room for herbal medicine, but it couldn't be brought to the table. Of course not. Old sir, do you know what is the most mysterious thing in the world? Cheng Xiao deliberately let it slip. When Yi Renxin and Yi Lingling both looked at him, Cheng Xiao said, "It's human body." Over the years, Cheng Xiao has been deeply impressed by the medicine of this continent. Minor illnesses are left to fate, while serious illnesses rely entirely on martial arts. Medical research in the entire continent is not developed, and is limited to some conventional herbal formulas, which can only treat some common ailments and disasters. Because there is such an unreasonable thing as martial arts, everyone's attention is focused on martial arts, resulting in the development of medicine for thousands of years. If a poor person has an illness, he has to rely on his body to fight it off. Once the resistance is over, he will be fine. The rich mostly believe in soul masters and do not believe in the so-called herbal medicines. Regardless of whether they have serious or minor illnesses, they always spend money to hire healing soul masters to treat them. Only those who have a little bit of savings but cannot afford to hire a soul master will try to hire someone who knows a little bit about herbal medicine to see a doctor and eat the herbal medicine indiscriminately to achieve the effect of curing the disease. Correspondingly, little is known about the acupuncture points of the human body. Although some people have noticed that there are certain places in the body that are different, they have not done too deep research. Even in their cultivation, they rely on meditation to drive the soul power to circulate in the body, but they can't explain why the soul power circulates in this way. They just rely on the experience accumulated by their ancestors from generation to generation, and future generations are confused from generation to generation. No one has ever thought of studying the human body. All they can think about is martial soul, martial soul, martial soul. It was just short of shouting, "Long live Wuhan." Especially after reading Yu Xiaoging's notes with weird paintings, Cheng Xiao's problem has reached its upper limit. Can you give a name to those special positions where the soul power circulates? Now, in order to climb Yi Renxin's big tree, Cheng Xiao decided to give him a little Chinese medicine shock. Everyone only knows how to let the soul power flow through meditation, but they don't know that the places where the soul power passes are called acupuncture points. There are 362 acupuncture points in the human body, which constitute 8 extraordinary meridians and 12 meridians. Among them, 8 extraordinary meridians the pulse is. Cheng Xiao talked eloquently and explained acupuncture points and acupuncture quite thoroughly, but did not dabble in other topics. There was no way he could do it. In his previous life, he was rather partial to science, and his prescriptions and other subjects were in a terrible mess. However, in acupuncture, he had a score of over 90. Although his level is far inferior to those of traditional Chinese medicine experts, for the people of Douluo continent, it is equivalent to opening up a new world. Following Cheng Xiao's statement, Yi Renxin and Yi Lingling gradually became fascinated, but their expressions were different. Yi Renxin is thoughtful. He is well informed. Based on what he has seen, heard and experienced, he can verify whether what Cheng Xiao said is correct. However, Cheng Xiao's description is too superficial, so he still has doubts. Yi Lingling, on the other hand, was filled with envy and admiration, staring at Cheng Xiao dimly with a pair of quiet orchid eyes. How can he know so much at the same age as me? At this moment, Yi Lingling felt that the boy in front of him, who was slightly shorter than himself, suddenly became tall and mysterious. It wasn't until Cheng Xiao's voice became hoarse that he stopped and brought Yi Renxin's thoughts back to reality. Yi Renxin shook his head. your statement is somewhat interesting. But it is too mysterious and cannot be confirmed. According to what you said, you only need to touch the thing called pulse to know. What's my physical condition? As long as I prick the so-called acupuncture points, I can be full of energy. Got hooked. Cheng Xiao smiled at the corner of his mouth and raised his eyebrows. If you don't believe me, mister, you will know after you try. I wonder if mister dare to let me feel my pulse. Yi Renxin was not angry at Cheng Xiao's mild provocation. After all, the person in front of him was just a teenage boy, and young people are naturally a little impetuous. Therefore, after Cheng Xiao proposed to check his pulse, Yi Renxin just felt funny. After a change of thought, he nodded and agreed. Okay, what do you want? Sit here, old man. Just take a moment to have a cup of tea and pass your hand to me. Cheng Xiao raised his hand and led him into a tea house. After throwing a few copper soul coins to the waiter, he sent him away. Then, Cheng Xiao explained to Yi Renxin, there are some things to pay attention to when feeling the pulse. Before feeling the pulse, no strenuous exercise is allowed. You need to sit or lie on your back. Yi Renxin listened quietly, and when the time was almost up, he handed his hand out. Cheng Xiao used his middle finger to check the pulse, his index finger to feel the pulse, and his ring finger to feel the pulse. He pressed down with 3 fingers, and his breathing gradually slowed down. Yi Lingling held the teacup in both hands, her slightly upturned eyelashes fluttering, and she watched Cheng Xiao's movements intently, very lost in thought. At first, Cheng Xiao was still smiling and joking at Yi Renxin. Lingling has a good talent. You won't steal my unique skills, right? Yi Lingling's pretty face flushed with blush, she pouted her lips, and whispered coquettishly, I don't know how. Who wants to learn from you? Cheng Xiao's face froze. It's not because of Yi Lingling's cute temper, but because of Yi Renxin's pulse. It's not right. The smiling eyes that were originally slightly curved because of teasing Yi Lingling gradually lost their joy and slowly opened them until they were as wide as possible. Cheng Xiao's brows were frowning without knowing when, and a solemn lingering between his brows was difficult to dissipate. What's wrong? Yi Lingling seemed to notice something was wrong, tilted her head and asked confusedly. No, it's okay. Cheng Xiao smiled reluctantly. The time passed a little longer. Cheng Xiao delayed, hoping for a miracle, but no matter how much he delayed, the bad premonition in his heart still could not be overturned. After a long time, Cheng Xiao took back his finger. How? Yi Renxin asked with a smile. Cheng Xiao pondered for a moment, then cupped his hands and apologized. It's because the junior is a little too crazy and can't figure out the old gentleman's pulse. I hope the old gentleman won't argue with the junior. Ha, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Yi Renxin waved his hand, I'm just curious. That's what the old gentleman said. Cheng Xiao agreed. I thought I could see something interesting. Yi Lingling felt a little disappointed. If you want to see something fun, why don't I take you there? Cheng Xiao changed the subject at the right time. Then, they discussed where to go to play later, and they seemed to have completely forgotten what had just happened. But the mature Yi Renxin could tell that Cheng Xiao was already a little absent-minded. Lingling, go and buy some tea leaves from the shop. This tea is pretty good. Buy a little of each. Yi Renxin touched Yi Lingling's head and said kindly. Oh, okay. Yi Lingling responded repeatedly and left the tea table. Say it, kid. After his granddaughter left, the smile on Yi Renxin's face disappeared and his eyes fell on Cheng Xiao's face. What did you say? Cheng Xiao pretended not to understand. Yi Renxin's somewhat cloudy eyes gradually became sharper, as if they could penetrate people's hearts. I have lived for more than 90 years, and I have probably met more people than you have eaten. You can't hide your thoughts from me. Cheng Xiao was silent for a while, then smiled bitterly. To be honest, old man, I'm really not sure about your pulse. Oh, just tell me what you know. Yi Renxin heard the implication of Cheng Xiao's words. It was, not sure, not sure. Old sir, please listen to me for now. If there is anything wrong, please forgive me for being young and frivolous. Cheng Xiao organized his words. Your veins are a bit strange. You are weak and your heart is weak. After saying that, Cheng Xiao paused and glanced at Yi Renxin. Yi Renxin said calmly, continue. Actually, I'm really not sure. Cheng Xiao smiled bitterly and explained. This junior is only half a bucket of water. Maybe I touched it wrong. Logically speaking, if this pulse condition was present, according to his past life experience, Yi Renxin should be lying on the hospital bed dying at this time. Her pulse is like a rootless root, weak and weak. How can she be so lively and energetic as she goes shopping with her granddaughter? But it's just so strange. Yi Ren's heart was jumping and he seemed to be fine. Before his father died, he had not checked his pulse. His mother, uncle and other relatives at home had all tried it again and again, but he could not find any difference from his previous life. But at this time, Yi Renxin's pulse condition made him confused, so he did not dare to make a conclusion. He thought about it and found that the only difference was whether Yi Renxin was a soul master or a healing soul master. Well, I don't understand those words of yours. Why don't you speak more frankly? Yi Renxin's expression became a little indifferent at some point. Chang Xiao had no choice but to bite the bullet and said, according to what I have learned, you are going to die. There was no sound from the other side. Chang Xiao raised his eyes and saw that Yi Renxin had a complicated expression on his face, showing no sign of anger. For a moment, an idea flashed through Chang Xiao's mind. Could it be that he himself knew his situation? Holy shit. He originally started to doubt his life because of this pulse condition, but he didn't expect that things would take a turn for the worse. But the problem is, he would rather touch the wrong one. After finally being able to list a big shot with some status and connections in the Soul Master world, I told him now that this big shot is going to die. The thigh is going to fall. All the previous thoughts were in vain, and Cheng Xiao felt worse than killing himself. Don't tell Ling Ling. Seeing Yi Ling Ling turn around, Yi Renxin ordered. Cheng Xiao nodded and said, Junior knows. Grandpa, I bought it. Yi Ling Ling playfully jumped to Yi Renxin's side. Yi Renxin took the tea and stood up. Then let's continue visiting Tiando City. Okay. Yi Ling Ling nodded repeatedly with a smile on his face. Cheng Xiao stood up thoughtfully, his smile forced and stiff. Don't think too much, have fun. Seeing this, Yi Renxin ordered. Cheng Xiao reluctantly nodded in agreement, and the two of them walked around until dusk without telling Yi Ling Ling. After looking at the sky, Cheng Xiao said goodbye. Old sir, it's getting late, why don't we just stop here today? I'll take my leave first. Yi Renxin narrowed her eyes slightly, and after pondering for a moment, she said, Are you tired of shopping, my little friend? Why don't you come with me to my old friend's house for a meal? Little friend. Cheng Xiao was keenly aware of the change of title. For people like Yi Renxin, the word, friend, was not something he said casually. If it had been before, Cheng Xiao would have been extremely happy at this moment, but after feeling the pulse, how could Cheng Xiao still be happy? Good news, I got connected with the big boss. Bad news, the boss is dying. Cheng Xiao felt mixed emotions. Is this appropriate? Cheng Xiao hesitated. It is against the rules for guests to bring guests. Appropriate. My old friend likes to make friends with others. Yi Renxin made nonsense. Grandpa is talking nonsense again. You said before that your friend doesn't like to be disturbed. Yi Ling Ling exposed it ruthlessly without giving any face. Ahem. I used to give him face, not to disturb him. I just brought someone with me, no big deal. Then, I'm sorry for you, this junior. Cheng Xiao agreed. The three of them went to a remote residence in Tiando City together. Although it was remote, the mansion was not small at all. It occupied a large area and the decoration was much more luxurious than that of ordinary nobles. Old guy, why don't you open the door yet? Yi Renxin looked across the house, looked up at the window, and laughed loudly. Gah! The door gradually opened, and a green figure came in front of him as quickly as the wind. Cheng Xiao's eyes were blurred. After the wind dispersed, he had time to look at the person intently. The green figure that caught his eye immediately changed Cheng Xiao's eyes. The old man who came out like the wind had dark green hair and beard, and the green hair on his head was a little messy, but it didn't make people feel sloppy. Under the green hair, there is a slightly stiff cheek, with deep-set cheeks, and a pair of eyes that shine like emeralds. When Cheng Xiao saw the distinctive green hair, his eyes froze. Titled Douluo, Dugu Bo. There will never be another person with that abnormal green hair, green beard and green eyes. The moment he saw Dugu Bo, what was in Cheng Xiao's mind was not his city-destroying jade-scaled snake venom, but another name, Ice and Fire Eyes. Among them, there are countless natural treasures that can transform the body, and those fairy grasses are what really make the Shrek 7 monsters stand out. Chang Xiao's heart couldn't help but beat when she thought of the fairy grass. Ha ha ha, after I received your letter, I counted the days and figured it would be these few days, so I will be waiting for you in this mansion. Douluo smiled, which made his slightly stiff cheeks look ugly. But everyone can feel his joy. I don't live here anymore. If you hadn't sent me a letter, I'm afraid you wouldn't have been able to find me when you came here. How is it? Did the journey go well? Nothing went wrong, there is someone to escort him. Yi Renxin replied. He saved a lot of people, and many people accepted his kindness. Whenever he walked around in any place with people on this continent, someone would volunteer to escort him. Is this Lingling? Douluo's eyes fell on Yi Lingling. Hello, Grandpa Douluo. Yi Lingling greeted him obediently, with a gentle manner and a very ladylike manner. Ha ha ha, not bad, much better than that girl from my family. Douluo praised, that girl from my family. Grandfather. A tall figure walked out of the house. Like Douluo, the girl had dark green eyes, a tall figure, and short dark purple hair. She looked very heroic. The tips of her slender fingers and nails were also painted aquamarine, which was indescribable. Absolutely beautiful, but with an enchanting charm. Yan, come here quickly, this is your Grandpa Yi. Douluo quickly waved to the tall girl to come closer. This is my granddaughter, Dougayan, she should be older than Lingling. Hello Grandpa Yi, After the two parties greeted each other and exchanged pleasantries, Douluo was about to invite everyone to come in and sit down. Only then did he notice Chang Xiao standing silently aside. A trace of doubt flashed in Douluo's eyes, and he looked at Yi Renxin without knowing why. Who is this young man? Well, a little friend brought him here to see you. Yi Renxin touched his beard and said. Oh, Douluo's strange eyes fell on Chang Xiao and looked carefully. This old friend knew about his temperament and didn't like outsiders to disturb him, but now he said he was specially brought to see him. Is there something special about this kid? Junior Chang Xiao, pay your respects to your Majesty Douluo Mian. Chang Xiao saluted under Douluo's appraising gaze. Your Majesty. Douluo narrowed his eyes. Since he calls himself Your Majesty instead of Grandpa, it proves that he is not Yi Renxin's relative or friend, and the relationship is not close. In this case, you don't need to pay too much attention to it. However, after all, he was brought by an old friend, so he should not be treated lightly or offend his old friend. Douluo thoughtfully waved his hand gently. No need to be polite, let's come in together. After everyone entered the room and sat down, Douluo asked his servants to prepare wine and food, and chatted with Yi Renxin about what he had experienced over the years. He recalled the years and felt a sigh of relief. Let's stop chatting. Let's talk about business. After the brief nostalgia, Yi Renxin asked, how is your health? Ha ha ha, you don't know about my body. I'm very healthy. Douluo's eyes fell on Dougayan, and he found an excuse to send the juniors away. Yan, you take Lingling and Chang Xiao to visit. See if she is satisfied with the room arranged for her. If she is not satisfied, ask the servants to clean up a new one as soon as possible to avoid delaying her bedtime. Dougayan suddenly realized that she knew that the two old men had important matters to discuss, and it was not convenient for her juniors to listen. Nodding, Dougayan stood up and took Chang Xiao and Yi Lingling to go upstairs. Chang Xiao, please stay. Suddenly, Yi Renxin called out to Chang Xiao. When Dougayan and Douluo heard this, they were a little surprised. Dougayan's enchanting eyes looked back and forth on Chang Xiao, trying to find something special about Chang Xiao. Sister Yan, Yi Lingling blinked. She was a little naive and didn't know why Dougayan stopped. Follow me. Dougayan withdrew his gaze, smiled and took Yi Lingling upstairs. His doubts became even more intense. There was nothing special. After the two girls left, Yi Renxin said to Chang Xiao under Douluo's inquiring eyes, little friend, would you like to feel the pulse under Douluo Mian? Chang Xiao was grateful. Mr. Yi was such a good man. Such a good opportunity was given to him. He was worried about not being able to talk to Douluo. According to the original work, this old poisoner has a weird personality, and Chang Xiao couldn't figure out how to get in touch with him for a while, and then plan the fairy grass. I'm afraid that if I accidentally touch this guy's bad luck, it will be difficult to undo it later. Now it's better, as soon as I dozed off, someone gave me a pillow. Chang Xiao cupped his hands. His actions were quite modest, but his words were completely the opposite. You probably don't need to touch the pulse under Dugu Mian, you can see it, Dugu Myangxia. He paused. Poisoned. That tone was decisive, without any hesitation. Boy, do you know my title? Dugu Bo's slightly narrowed eyes suddenly opened, and his dry and stiff cheeks were so condensed that they seemed to be dripping with water. The whole body roared and pressed towards Chang Xiao. In an instant, there seemed to be an immovable mountain on Chang Xiao's shoulders, weighing him down so hard that he couldn't breathe, and the joints all over his body made subtle noises. Chang Xiao gritted his teeth. Of course I know, the title is Poison. When Dugu Bo saw that Chang Xiao could still speak clearly, a flash of surprise flashed in his eyes. He then secretly increased the pressure and asked again, Poison Douluo, you have been poisoned. Do you think it is possible? Seeing the pressure increasing, Chang Xiao suddenly felt pressure in his heart, but his face remained calm. He quietly held down his left hand, fearing that he could not help but activate his external soul bone to resist. He remembered what Dugu Bo was thinking when he first saw Tang San's attached soul bone. He didn't dare to bet that Dugu Bo would find out with his conscience and treat him specially. After all, he is just borrowing Yi Renxin's skin now, but how long can Yi Renxin survive? When Yi Renxin dies, it will be difficult for him to ensure that Dugu Bo can cherish his old feelings and never touch him. The soul power circulated quietly, flowing continuously according to the Tai Chi line. A soft force immediately relieved Chang Xiao's pressure, and there was no threat to him at all. Chang Xiao looked relaxed, even calmer than before. It's natural for Dugu Mian to be poisoned by others, but what if it's your own? Dugu Bo's expression changed slightly. Not only was Chang Xiao able to withstand his increasing pressure, but more importantly, he revealed the secret of his body in one word. He was a dignified titled Douluo, but not only did he lose face in front of a child, but also the secret of his poisoning was found out. If it spread to the ears of his sworn enemy at Zhuhuaguan, the consequences could be disastrous. Okay, just give him a try. He's invited here today not for you to teach him a lesson. He's here to treat you. Just as Dugu Bo's thoughts were turning, Yi Renxin waved his hand, and a soul force full of life blocked Dugu Bo's pressure. Chang Xiao felt relaxed and took a long breath. See a doctor for me. Lao Yi, are you kidding me? Dugu Bo was stunned. How old is he? You're not that old, didn't you just lose face with him? Yi Renxin teased. When Dugu Bo heard this, the corners of his mouth twitched and he was speechless for a moment. Yi Renxin shook his head and ignored him. Instead, he looked at Chang Xiao and said, Little friend, I invite you to come over. I have an idea that may require your cooperation. Old sir, it doesn't matter. According to what you said, there are many acupuncture points on this body. If used properly, they can have miraculous effects. I didn't believe it at first, but what you said in the tea house today really opened my eyes. It made me a little fuzzy. The idea. Silently listening to Yi Renxin's words, Chang Xiao's eyes became brighter and brighter, and he looked at Dugu Bo eagerly, just like his behavior when he used mice for drug experiments for the first time in his previous life. You just oppressed me, and this whereabouts must have fallen into my hands. Yi Renxin was very interested in the so-called acupuncture points and acupuncture. Originally he did not believe in these, but Chang Xiao could tell his physical condition just by feeling his pulse, so he had some ideas to try. It just so happened that the subject of the experiment was right in front of him, and with him, Jukes and Begonia, it would be difficult for Chang Xiao to try even if he wanted to die. Your Majesty, I'm offended. Chang Xiao said with a smile, with a slightly malicious curve at the corner of his mouth. Old guy, are you sure there will be no problem? Why do I feel like this kid is so ghostly? Dugu Bo had a bad premonition and leaned back. What are you afraid of? You are a titled Douluo, but why are you afraid that a child will kill you? Yi Renxin sneered. Besides, with me here, what can go wrong? I just want him to try it. I have a hunch that if he can cooperate with Jukes and Haitang, it might have miraculous effects. Yi Renxin is 100 years old and has extremely rich experience. After realizing that the meridian theory described by Chang Xiao did not seem to be nonsense, the first thing that came to his mind was whether he could cooperate with Jukes and Haitang. Jukes and Haitang's abilities are extremely single. They are all area-wide general healing, treating toxins, treating external injuries, treating internal injuries, treating mental injuries, etc. Moreover, its healing ability is also quite powerful, making it the well-deserved #1 auxiliary spirit in the healing system. But Yi Renxin was not satisfied. At the same time, there can only be 2 descendants of Juxin Begonia alive in the world. If the older generation lives too long, the newborn child will not be able to awaken the 9 Hearts Begonia when he is 6 years old, but will inherit another martial spirit. This also makes Juxin Begonia very easy to date. Yi Renxin gave birth to Yi Lingling's father early because she got married too early. At that time, Yi Renxin's father had not yet passed away, so Yi Lingling's father could not inherit Juxin Haidang. At that time, the whole family was so worried that their hair turned gray because they were afraid that Yi Lingling would not be able to awaken Juxin Haidang. In that case, Juxin Haidang would be completely cut off from its inheritance. Fortunately, the inheritance of Juxin Begonia is special. After Yi Renxin's father passed away, Yi Lingling was born, and inherited Juxin Begonia from generation to generation during the awakening ceremony. This made everyone breathe a sigh of relief. Otherwise, he, Yi Renxin, would be over 90 years old and still have to marry a concubine to pass on the 9 Hearts Begonia. If word gets out, I'm afraid people will say that I'm an old man and don't cultivate. If Juxin Haidang produces 2 titled Douluo, it will be over, and the descendants will not be able to inherit Juxin Haidang for several generations. After more than 10 generations, the blood relationship is shallow. When the titled Douluo dies, it may be unknown whether he can inherit Juxin Begonia after more than 10 generations. This can be regarded as the curse of Juxin Begonia. It has become an extremely distressing thing even if it lives for a long time. Every heir to Juxin Begonia will suffer from internal friction because of this curse throughout his life. He is afraid of living longer, but also wants to live longer. He struggles with this contradiction day and night. Fortunately, like the 7 treasures glazed pagoda, Juxin Begonia also has a huge flaw. It cannot break through to the title Douluo. Its soul power can only reach the 89th level soul Douluo in its lifetime, and its lifespan is limited to less than 120 years. This is also a blessing among misfortunes. Otherwise, Juxin Begonia might have lost its inheritance thousands of years ago. How could it still have the holy hands of benevolence today? Without the obsession to break through the titled Douluo, Yi Renxin would naturally turn his attention to other aspects, and exploring more of Juxin Haidang might be his other priority. He doesn't want to stop at treatment. He also wants increase. He doesn't have to break through the title, he doesn't have to establish a family, but he wants to truly surpass the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda. But how can the barrier of Wuhan be broken so easily? Yi Renxin spent his entire life without exploring this possibility. But things were different now. After coming into contact with the meridian theory, Yi Renxin saw a glimmer of hope. Whether he can surpass the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda depends entirely on this boy. Yi Renxin's eyes fell on Cheng Xiao with a hint of inexplicable meaning. Your Majesty, please extend your hand. Cheng Xiao cupped his hand. Seeing his old friend's insistence, Douluo had no choice but to stretch out his hand. The kid on the left and right couldn't do anything to him, but he wanted to see what this kid was capable of. Cheng Xiao put his hand on Douluo's wrist to feel his pulse. Soon after, Cheng Xiao asked him to put on the other one. In less than a cup of tea, Cheng Xiao took it back and asked about Douluo's symptoms. Senior Douluo, are you feeling uncomfortable? Douluo glanced sideways at him. If you don't even have this, I advise you to give up as soon as possible. Hearing this, Cheng Xiao felt helpless. It was a process that he had to go through. He had already formed a habit in his previous life. It wasn't that he couldn't figure out Douluo's symptoms. He just asked more questions to confirm his diagnosis and avoid misdiagnosis. I didn't expect Douluo to be so uncooperative. Your Baihui point, well, that is, the top of your head and the soles of your feet will cause severe pain late at night. Cheng Xiao said while observing Douluo's reaction to verify the 2 aspects. After hearing Cheng Xiao's narration, Douluo's expression finally changed. He didn't expect that this kid could describe his symptoms in detail just by touching his wrist. Yi Renxin's eyes also changed slightly, and she trusted Cheng Xiao's meridian theory even more. Seeing Douluo's expression change, Cheng Xiao knew for sure. There was no doubt that Douluo was poisoned. It could be detected from the pulse. The pulse was disordered and the heart fire was strong, resulting in an irritable, extreme and weird personality. Qi and blood were deficient, like fire. With an empty cauldron, it is difficult to remove toxins from the body. Old sir, it's your turn to take action. Cheng Xiao stood up and saluted Yi Renxin. Well, tell me. Yi Renxin nodded and released his martial spirit. A begonia flower appeared in front of him, and the 8 spirit rings were beating in unison, which was the best combination of 2 yellow, 2 purple and 4 black. If you follow your idea, use soul power as needles to perform acupuncture. Cheng Xiao pointed at several acupuncture points on Douluo's body. The pain in these places under Douluo's crown should be caused by toxins accumulated in the meridians. It is necessary to insert needles 1 cm and 3 mm from these points to repair the acupoints damaged by toxins, and then the whole body can be penetrated. Then, 2 cm of needles are inserted into these 2 points to protect the heart veins. Then Douluo's poisonous technique is used to guide the toxins back into the martial spirit. The old gentleman needs to insert needles into these acupuncture points to warm them up. Meridians. Under the command of Cheng Xiao, Yi Renxin condensed the soul power into an extremely thin needle shape. This was a relatively labor-intensive micro-operation. If the control of the soul power was not high, it would not be possible at all. But Yi Renxin was already a contra and lived to be 100 years old. Although it was a bit difficult, he still managed it. Yi Renxin's forehead was dripping with sweat, and she controlled the soul power needle to penetrate Douluo's various acupuncture points. Hiss. Does this thing hurt so much? The moment the soul needle entered the acupuncture point, Douluo suddenly trembled. When Cheng Xiao saw this, he grinned almost to the base of his ears, and his eyes were bent into the shape of crescents. Did you suffer a lot because you, this old guy, just oppressed me? Chapter 51. Whether acupuncture is painful depends on the individual's pain threshold. In addition, it also has a lot to do with the technique of inserting the needles. As a titled Douluo has experienced countless battles, big and small, and his threshold is naturally quite high. But there is something to be said about the needle insertion technique. No matter how rich Yi Renxin's experience is, this is his first time trying acupuncture, not to mention using soul power as the needle. The strength, angle, and depth are all extremely difficult to control. It would be strange if it doesn't hurt. What's more, Cheng Xiao had done something bad to begin with and specially found a few acupuncture points that would cause unbearable pain but also have some benefits. It's strange that Douluo can hold back. Boy, you didn't do anything, did you? Douluo glared angrily at Cheng Xiao. Hey, Your Majesty, you have really wronged me. You have been poisoned too deeply, and detoxification must be a process. Pain is normal. Cheng Xiao spread his hands, pretending to be innocent. Douluo was dubious, only thinking that Cheng Xiao always had a faint smile on his face. Okay. Unable to see the way out, Douluo gritted his teeth, snorted coldly, closed his eyes and endured the pain. Continue. A soul ring under Yi Renxin's feet lit up. He didn't know what kind of soul skill it was. The soul power roared out, but was forcibly condensed into a needle shape by Yi Renxin. Under Cheng Xiao's guidance, it penetrated Douluo's major acupuncture points one after another. Well, Douluo groaned, big beads of sweat falling from his forehead and smashing on his shoulders. Time passed bit by bit, and the treatment finally came to an end. Among the meridians, the acupuncture points damaged by toxins were repaired one by one, and the accumulated toxins also flowed through unimpeded under the mobilization of Douluo's poison power. However, the meridians passing through would be infected by the toxins. However, after Juxin Haitang's soul needle is inserted into the acupuncture points, it will quickly integrate into the meridians and repair these infected areas. Puff! Suddenly, Douluo opened his eyes, a flush appeared on his dry cheeks, his throat felt sweet, and a mouthful of black blood suddenly spurted out. Be careful, get out of the way! Yi Renxin shouted sharply. Cheng Xiao took 2 steps back, not letting the blood splash on his body. See, the black blood on the ground was like boiling water, foaming and emitting a strong stench. Grandfather! At this moment, an exclamation came from upstairs, and several people looked together and saw Douluo running down the stairs and coming to Douluo's side, looking anxious. Grandpa, what's wrong with you? It's okay, Yan Yan. Douluo waved his hand and reassured, it's an old problem, let me have your Grandpa Yi cure it. Look, am I not doing well? Your Grandpa Yi is a sacred hand. With him now, there can be no problem. Douluo Yan looked around Douluo and found that he was not seriously injured, so she breathed a sigh of relief. Yi Lingling also walked over and cautiously cast a doubtful look at Yi Renxin and Cheng Xiao. Yi Renxin shook her head slightly, indicating that nothing was wrong and asked her not to worry. How do you feel? Yi Renxin asked. Douluo closed his eyes, circulated his soul power, and carefully realized the differences in various parts of his body. Not long after, Douluo suddenly opened his eyes, and an uncontrollable surprise appeared in his green eyes. The toxin is gone. A burst of light burst out from Yi Renxin's eyes. Not only that, my soul power, which has been stagnant for many years, has just grown a little. Douluo couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. He has been stuck at level 91 for many years. He has been troubled by toxins and has not been able to make any progress for many years. But this time, after he introduced the toxins in his body back to his martial spirit, he actually felt a slight increase in his soul power. Doesn't this mean that there is hope for level 92? Yi Renxin's eyes fluctuated slightly, and he guessed, your toxins are originally brought by the martial soul and remain in the body. Over time, the toxin must be extremely large. Now that it is reintroduced into the martial soul, it will naturally increase the soul power, increased. However, I estimate that as the number of times you use martial arts increases, the toxins will accumulate in your body again, causing your cultivation speed to gradually slow down in the future. Ha ha ha, it doesn't matter in the future. It'll be good if you can increase your soul power during this period of cultivation. Douluo was really happy at the moment. Only he knew the pain of not being able to make any progress in cultivation for many years. Being able to see the improvement of soul power at this moment is already a great achievement. Satisfied. Besides, if there is siltation again in the future, I'll just come back to you. Yi Renxin was silent for a while, and Douluo keenly noticed something was wrong. He raised his head and looked at Yi Renxin. What? Cheng Xiaomoran, what can I do? They are almost dead, how can they survive? It's okay. Yi Renxin shook his head and changed the subject. To treat you this time, I consumed very little soul power. It can almost be said to be negligible. Treating you more than 10 years ago cost me a lot of soul power. However, the control of soul power has extremely high requirements. It takes some effort. Oh, Douluo's eyes moved, and he heard the implication of Yi Renxin's words. Consuming less soul power, you can achieve better therapeutic effects. All you need is precise control of soul power and stronger mental strength. Doesn't that mean that this method can take Juxin Haitang's abilities to a higher level? I'm wondering, if I use the soul power of Juxin Begonia to stimulate those acupuncture points in your mouth, can it extend your life to a certain extent? Yi Renxin thought about it for a moment, then looked at Cheng Xiao. When Cheng Xiao heard this, his mind suddenly exploded and he raised his head suddenly. He knew what Yi Renxin was thinking. During acupuncture, in order to allow the dying person to see their loved ones, several acupuncture points will be stimulated to forcefully hold on to the last breath and buy a little more time. Cheng Xiao mentioned these to Yi Renxin when he was on the road. Unexpectedly, Yi Renxin actually listened. Yi Renxin actually wanted to use the healing soul power of Juxin Begonia and the method of acupuncture to hang up his life that was about to end. I have to say, this is a genius and crazy idea. Whether it can be done or not is unknown. But this inspired Cheng Xiao unprecedentedly, and he wanted to think more. It is possible to prolong life, but can the meridians be widened in a short time and soul power be quickly restored by stimulating acupuncture points? Or, directly stimulate the human body's potential and increase the speed of cultivation? What's more, increasing the output of soul power can achieve the effect of increasing the attack power of soul skills. The so-called stimulation will of course have sequelae, but will Juxin Haitang be afraid? That kind of rich breath of life and absolute healing can completely ignore all the sequelae. I don't know yet whether it will succeed, but if it does. Cheng Xiao's scalp went numb when he thought of this. This is directly competing with the Qibao glazed sect. It's going to kill people. P.S. I think some people have questions. Please explain. Juxin Haitang 89 is my second design, because I thought about the age of a titled Douluo, which is at least 300 years old and the upper limit is more than 1000 years old. If there are two titled Douluo in the same period, Luo's nine-hearted begonia will not have any descendants for at least a few hundred years. 300 years is enough to give birth to at least 6 generations. This is still a small amount, and it is calculated based on Tang Hao getting married and having children at the age of 44. If you get married and have children at the age of 20, you can give birth to more generations. I don't know how many bloodlines have been mixed up. If it is passed down from generation to generation, it also means that the gene of Juxin begonia has always existed. If it is interrupted for more than 10 generations, there is no guarantee that it will be inherited after more than 10 generations. If there is a titled Douluo from Juxin Haitang, it is really easy to date the title, unless the titled Douluo is hundreds of years old and married a concubine and gave birth to a child before his death for the sake of inheritance. But if you die accidentally. So I set Juxin begonia to be capped at level 89, with a maximum age of 120. In this way, it seems more reasonable that Juxin begonia has not been cut off. There will always be only 2 descendants of Juxin Haitang. This is an unchangeable fate. It was precisely because of this that the Qibao glazed sect did not regard it as a threat. Because just 2 people are determined not to form a powerful sect. But now, Yi Renxin wants Juxin Haitang to get involved in the amplification system. This will directly affect the status of the number 1 martial spirit in the auxiliary department of Dao Qibao Glazed Pagoda. If the Qibao Glazed sect knew about it, they would definitely not tolerate this happening. Thinking about what the Qibao Glazed sect has, one of the 3 sects on the Douluo continent is considered to be at the top. Nowadays, when the Wuhan Palace cannot be enshrined and the Haoshan sect is hidden from the world, the power of the 2 titled Douluo, Sword Douluo and Bone Douluo, is even more daunting. What can Yi Renxin do to compete with it? As long as a little bit of news leaks out, it will lead to death. Cheng Xiao's mouth twitched and he couldn't figure out why Yi Renxin would do such a dangerous thing. Is it because your life is not long and you want to fight before you die? Give the entire Qibao glazed sect a little shock. It doesn't make sense. Didn't he think about Yi Lingling? Cheng Xiao's eyes fell on Yi Lingling, who was a little confused. It's possible, but I haven't explored it before, so I don't dare to make false claims. Cheng Xiao hesitated for a while and replied. It's not that he wants to hide his clumsiness, but he really doesn't know. Acupuncture can stimulate potential, but he had no soul power in his previous life. He had no idea what effect it could have when combined with soul power. Yi Renxin just put forward an idea, and no one could guarantee whether it would actually succeed. Well, Yi Renxin touched his beard and lowered his eyes slightly. He seemed to have doubts and was thinking about something. Du Guyan was very confused. Yi Renxin was a healing contra, and the 8 soul rings under his feet couldn't be fake at all. Why would a contra ask a 10-year-old child for advice? Let's talk about this after dinner. Ha ha ha, I'm happy today. Let's go, old guy, I won't be drunk tonight. With Du Guyan's help, Du Gubo stood up and greeted a few people to the restaurant. Under the leadership of Du Gubo, everyone went to the restaurant to sit down and eat. The 2 old men exchanged glasses, and their words were full of memories of the past. It is quite different from the topics discussed by the juniors. Du Guyan took the opportunity to pour a glass of fruit wine for Cheng Xiao, with a sly and probing look in his eyes. Cheng Xiao, what level is your soul power? She was worried about the 2 old men leaving him alone, but she wanted to see what was different about this boy. Well, it's not high. Cheng Xiao blinked and deftly said, my innate soul power is only at the 1st level. Who asked you about your innate soul power? Du Guyan frowned imperceptibly. This guy is really dishonest. Then what is your martial spirit? Are you planning to enroll in Tiando Royal Academy with Lingling? The martial spirit is a mutated martial spirit, so let's not mention it. Cheng Xiao said, my talent is too poor, so I can only go to Yuexuan to learn some etiquette. And you, are you here to check your household registration? Cheng Xiao quickly turned his head, picked up some food for Yi Lingling, and fooled Du Guyan. Lingling, eat more. Yi Lingling nodded shyly and took a gentle sip. Is it tasty? It's delicious. Yi Lingling nodded with a smile. Cheng Xiao's face was full of doting. Although Yi Lingling is a few years older, Yi Lingling has not had many friends since he was a child. He is introverted and lacks experience in interacting with others. When the two get along, Cheng Xiao acts like an older brother. When Du Guyan saw this, she felt a little annoyed. This obvious differential treatment made her, who had been sought after by countless people since she was a child, angry. She had never been so ignored. In school, which boy doesn't listen to her instructions? Even Yu Tianong of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect obeyed her words. But this kid was like a stick, he didn't even look at her, his eyes only fell on Yi Lingling. There were waves of coldness around him. Cheng Xiao was not a fool, how could he not feel it? Cheng Xiao is also helpless. He also wants to have a good relationship with Du Guyan. After all, he has a grandfather who is titled Douluo and does not look at the face of a monk or the face of a Buddha. But look at what this girl is asking. They are all things that he needs to keep secret for the time being. If she continues to ask, he doesn't know how many excuses he will have to make up. This emotional intelligence means having a grandfather with a title of Douluo, otherwise he would have no friends. I really don't know how that guy Yu Tianong can stand it. It's chilly on one side, gentle as water on the other, comparable to the two heavens of ice and fire. Cheng Xiao sighed. Luckily it was only for this day, otherwise he would have been offended in the future. Just be patient and it will pass. Logically speaking, you should be suffering from these toxins for more than 10 years. Why don't you seem to be in serious trouble when I see you today? Could it be that someone here has treated you? Yi Renxin, after taking a sip of wine, he talked about Du Gubo's body. Ha ha ha, you don't know, I came across a good place. Hearing this, Du Gubo put down his wine glass and raised his brows, feeling quite proud. Cheng Xiao, who was dealing with two girls, heard this and his attention was instantly attracted. If he guessed correctly. Yi Renxin lowered his eyes, smiled and said nothing, waiting for Du Gubo to continue. Du Gubo gave it a try, but Yi Renxin did not take the bait, nor was he annoyed, so he continued. I met a strange place a few years ago, where there is a pool of spring water, half of which is as hot as the magma in the center of the earth, and half of which is as cold as the ice of the North Pole. The place is quite peculiar. Sure enough, it's the ice and fire eyes. Cheng Xiao's eyes flashed, and he started to think about it, thinking about how to plan to get the fairy grass without arousing Du Gubo's vigilance. For some reason, that place was surrounded by all kinds of herbs that I didn't recognize, and they had a suppressive effect on the toxins in my body. Later, I lived nearby and often practiced suppressing toxins near the spring. This is also, I said, the reason why you didn't write to me is that you can't find me in this mansion. Oh, there is such a strange place. Yi Renxin was slightly surprised. Ha ha ha, I will take you to see it another day. I guarantee you will be surprised. I treat it as a medicine garden. The poison planted there matures in just 1 month. It's very weird. Your Majesty, I wonder if you can show this junior to me. Cheng Xiao took the opportunity to interrupt. No. The tipsy Du Gubo waved his hand and said with a smile, you can't stand that place. You are too weak. Even Yan Yan, I have never taken him there. If he is not careful, then there will be problems. Your Majesty, are you looking down on others? Cheng Xiao left the table and poured a glass of wine for Du Gubo. Since I asked to see it, I naturally know what's going on there. Your Majesty, you can rest assured, I know what's going on. Ha ha ha, what do you think? You only listen to my talk about that place, and you don't know the horror there. How can you be so confident? It's better for children not to talk big. Du Gubo laughed and nodded. Cheng Xiao only thought that he was a newborn calf and was not afraid of tigers, so he didn't take it to heart. When adults are talking, children should be honest and don't interrupt. Du Guyan was already a little unbalanced in his heart. Seeing that he insisted on going, he rolled his eyes and said, I can't even go, what can you do? It looks like I need to throw out some useful information. Cheng Xiao ignored her and looked at Du Gubo and Yi Renxin. Your Majesty, old sir, do you two know the name of this spring? Du Gubo paused and looked at Yi Renxin. Both of them saw a hint of surprise in the other's eyes. The two of them were mature and sophisticated, and they obviously heard the implication of Cheng Xiao's words. Thinking of what Cheng Xiao has shown before in his mature style, he is not the kind of person who boasts. Oh, you know, Putting down their wine glasses together, Douluo and Yu Renshin looked more serious and waited for Chang Xiao to continue. Of course Chang Xiao would not say it directly. He did not know much about the ice and fire eyes, and the description in the original book was simply not enough to keep the two of them interested. Therefore, we must pay attention to skills and how to use limited information to maximize benefits. If I can tell you the origin of this spring, will your majesty agree to take me there to see it? Chang Xiao asked with a smile. Okay. Douluo nodded in agreement without hesitation. Seeing Douluo so happy, Chang Xiao couldn't help but lean back. What's the situation? I thought there was some pushback, so why did I agree? This made all his organized efforts useless, like a punch on cotton. Chang Xiao was doubtful. He rolled his eyes and looked at Yu Renshin. Old sir, you saw that your majesty agreed. Please help me bear witness so that I won't default on my debt later. HMPH. Douluo snorted coldly upon hearing this. How could I, a mighty titled Douluo, deceive a child like yours? Hurry up and tell me. Yu Renshin laughed and said with a smile, okay, I will be a witness today. Even if he doesn't agree, I will take you there and he won't stop me. Grandpa, I want to go too. Yi Lingling was eating. Hearing this, he looked up at Yu Renshin and then at Chang Xiao. He lowered his head in thought and then raised his hand weakly. Okay, Lingling will go too. Yu Renshin's eyes were full of love. As long as his granddaughter asked, how could he refuse? Since time is running out, he naturally wants to satisfy his granddaughter more. Douluo was stunned. Didn't he just say he wouldn't let him go? Why did your tone change so suddenly? You're all going to co-write it, right? I'm the only one left. How is this possible? Douluo quickly threw herself next to Douluo, shook Douluo's arm, and said coquettishly, Grandpa, I'm going too, they've all gone, you can't be partial. I don't care, I'm going too. Douluo frowned and hesitated for a moment. Let's all go. With Grandpa Yi here, what are you afraid of? Yu Renshin waved his hand and agreed on Douluo's behalf. No matter how strange that place is, as long as Yu Renshin is there, there will never be any problems. This is the confidence of Juxin Haitang, something that Qibao Glazed Pagoda can never do. Thank you, Grandpa Yi. Douluo smiled like Yan. Can you say it now, brat? Douluo rolled his eyes, but did not express dissatisfaction with Yu Renshin's behavior of overstepping his authority. Instead, he looked at Chang Xiao and said, my ancestors once had the honor to follow a few big shots to explore a ruins. There was nothing else in the ruins. When they entered, the ruins had been looted countless times by many treasure hunters, so they didn't gain much. Chang Xiao eloquently said that all the relics were just excuses to increase credibility. In fact, they were all fabricated by Chang Xiao. He was best at telling lies and making up stories. But my ancestor loved to paint, and he found a few murals on the dome of the ruins that were quite interesting. To ordinary people, they might just think that the murals are just ordinary murals, but my ancestors saw the clue. It describes a great war. Chang Xiao narrated what happened after the Dragon God War and the fall of the two Dragon Kings. Then, the two Dragon Kings both died and fell to the ground, forming a strange spring that was hot and cold. The last mural was engraved with the words, Ice and Fire Eyes. After telling the story, Chang Xiao took a long breath and felt his mouth was dry again. After taking a sip of fruit wine, he said, this story has been passed down from generation to generation in my family. Originally, I just listened to it as a bedtime story. But I didn't want to hear it again. Now that Senior has heard about the strange spring water, he knows that this story is probably true. Several people looked confused, as if they were immersed in that unprecedented battle. The world of gods, dragons, etc. all made them feel a murderous aura approaching. Yu Renshin came back to his senses and asked, do you have the location of the ruins? We all thought it was just a story about our ancestors coaxing children to sleep, so we didn't pay much attention to it, so no one went to explore it. Naturally, the location of the ruins has been lost. Chang Xiao shook his head. This is the most reasonable excuse and no one can find the omission. Well, Douluo pondered, then raised his eyebrows and said, the story is a good story, but unfortunately, it is just a story. Your story may be just a coincidence, and there is no way it can be done. What does it mean? Want to default on your debt? Cheng Xiao's eyes widened. You're a dignified titled Douluo, you're shameless, right? Little guy, don't say that I bully you. Although your story is quite interesting, you still can't convince me. Douluo said with a joking look on his face. You can tell a story that he has the eyes of ice and fire. Then can I also make up a story, saying that he is a hot and cold Mandarin duck pot? What I make up may be more reliable than yours. At least there are no gods, dragons or other illusory things. Quote. Illusory. Cheng Xiao frowned and immediately realized that for a titled Douluo like Douluo who didn't have much background, there was no source of information about becoming a god. Naturally, he felt that things like gods and dragons were too illusory. Unless there is a way to convince him. Haha, Myanxia, God does exist. It's just that Myanxia doesn't know it. Cheng Xiao pointed to the sky and said with a smile. HMPH, yellow-mouthed kid, if there is a god, then I have killed countless people in my life, so why haven't I seen any divine punishment? Douluo's face suddenly turned pale. He was already fickle, but now that he was refuted by a child, he felt that his face was tarnished, immediately got angry. Your Majesty, please don't worry about annoying me. Let me ask you a question first. What is the angel god enshrined in Wuhan Palace? It's just something to fool the world. Douluo said with a cold face, waving his sleeves, a bunch of sanctimonious people. There is Poseidon Island overseas, and even the Spirit Hall is difficult to capture. So what does the Poseidon they worship mean? Douluo hesitated for a moment, but still refuted it disdainfully. A group of conservative fishermen are just relying on the power of the sea and their martial arts advantages. What can they prove? Cheng Xiao shook his head. Then can you explain why the seraph martial spirit in the martial spirit hall is born with full innate soul power or level 20 full soul power? It's rare in the world. Douluo and Yi Renxin changed their expressions at the same time. They stood up suddenly, supported the table, leaned forward, stared at Cheng Xiao, and asked solemnly, where did you get this news? They have never heard of the idea of being born with full soul power at level 20. It can even be said that no one on this continent has heard of it. If this news spreads, it will shock the mainland. After all, in everyone's impression, having full innate soul power is already the limit. No one has ever broken this rule. But now there is a teenage boy standing in front of him, vowing to overturn the perception of the entire continent. If this news is true, then why does Wuhan Palace block this news? Could it be that there is some secret in this? It's scary to think about it. It doesn't mean that Wuhan Palace can't have its own secrets. The Haoshan sect has the secret method of ring explosion, and the Qibao glazed sect has the secret method of controlling the heart. They also won't spread these stunts easily. How can people know about my ability to eat? To put it bluntly, Wuhandian, no matter how upright and selfless it advertises on the surface, is essentially just a force of soul masters, but this force is more inclusive and can accept lower-level civilian soul masters. Since we are a force, we can naturally have our own secrets. Why must someone with level 20 innate knowledge tell others? Wouldn't it be better to use it as a trump card? So there is nothing to blame. Douluo and Yi Renxin did the same thing after they found out. However, if this news is true, does it mean that the God in Cheng Xiao's mouth is also true? So behind this, level 20 innate soul power, is there a secret about God hidden behind it? Everyone once thought that the angel God was just an illusory existence. There might be countless soul masters who would join the spirit hall, but would anyone really believe in the angel God? Just look at what those cardinals did. Do you believe in angels and gods? Who is a serious person who believes in God? But when God truly materializes in front of them, countless people will despair. No one can resist a high and powerful God. Not even the 3 sects above or the 4 sects below can do it. Cheng Xiao pushed all thanks to Yu Xiaogang. In the college I studied before, there was a teacher named Yu Xiaogang who said this. I have good friends with his disciples. We are in the same class, and we are in the same class on weekdays. I will exchange learning experiences here, and I heard these from him. He was not afraid that the news would spread. After all, if Wuhan Palace came to investigate, they would definitely trace the source. When the time comes, they would trace Yu Xiaogang, and finally discover that, the biggest traitor turned out to be his own Pope Bibi Dong. So, Does the leak have anything to do with him, an 11-year-old student? It doesn't matter. If you want to cause trouble, you should go to Yu Xiaogang, the college teacher who teaches this student like me. I am only responsible for learning, and no one told me not to spread the word. As for Yu Xiaogang's confusion after being caught, when did he teach Cheng Xiao? Is it important? It doesn't matter, because Bibi Dong's love brain will let Yu Xiaogang be caught. Yu Xiaogang. The two of them frowned and couldn't think of the name for a long time. However, Yi Renxin suddenly remembered a title and suddenly realized, is it Yu Xiaogang from the Golden Triangle? I heard that he seems to be the son of the patriarch of the Blue Electric Tyrannosaurus Rex family. Do you know who it is? Du Gubo was a little surprised. I heard someone mention it back then. Yi Renxin nodded. You became famous early. Later, due to health reasons, you rarely traveled on the mainland. I haven't heard that their reputation is normal. After a pause, Yi Renxin added, it's not surprising if it's him. How to say, he once published a theory called, The 10 Core Competencies of Wuhan. I had followed him for a while because of this. With no hope of being banned, Yi Renxin will naturally focus on other aspects. Theory is also a direction that he cares about, so he has some impressions of Yu Xiaogang. Later, because of this theory, he offended many people. Some gossip spread. It is said that he entered the Wuhan Hall with the help of the Elder Order in his father's hand. Then he deliberately approached the saint who was still a saint at that time. The female Bibi Dong stole many secrets from Wuhan Palace. That is to say, the news about the innate soul power of level 20 is true. Du Gubo was surprised. Yi Renxin pondered for a moment, mostly yes. The two of them were silent for a while. The smell of alcohol in the restaurant was very strong, but neither of them was drunk at all. The two girls didn't understand the meaning behind this, they just thought it was no big deal, right? Isn't it just that the martial spirit is more powerful? After digesting this somewhat shocking news for a while, Du Gubo finally no longer looked down on the young man in front of him as before. You continue. My family has some dealings with Sea Soul Masters. I have communicated with those Sea Soul Masters, and they said that everyone who lives on the sea believes in the sea god. I heard an interesting rumor from them. Poseidon once gave Poseidon Island the power to worship and protect every fisherman who believed in Poseidon. Someone once swore that he had seen miracles. A beautiful woman brought the will of Poseidon, saved them from the storm, and Poseidon calmed the storm. At this point, Cheng Xiao paused and said with a smile, Hey, I don't believe in miracles. But we can guess a lot from this rumor. Comparing the angelic miracles of the angel god and the Wuhan temple to fool the world, does the so-called beautiful woman have the same, Poseidon, as the Wuhan like the Wuhan temple? So when the Wuhan is revealed, those dead fishermen mistake it for a miracle from Poseidon. Think more deeply, the god of the sea bestows, divine power. The word bestows. Cheng Xiao no longer continued, but left a hook to guide several people to think. Suddenly, a burst of light burst out from Yi Renxin's eyes. God can bestow martial arts souls. That's right. Cheng Xiao nodded. God can bestow martial souls. I call it, God-given martial souls. As a martial soul condensed by divine power, it's not surprising that it is innately level 20. There really is a god. Compared to Yi Renxin, Du Gubo, as a titled Douluo, was undoubtedly more impacted at this time. He once thought that being a titled Douluo at level 99 would be the end of his life, and that at level 99 he would be invincible. But now, he was suddenly told that there was a god in the sky. For the first time, he realized that his level 91 soul power was so insignificant. How is it, Your Majesty, do you agree to take me to the Ice and Fire Eyes? Seeing Du Gubo's complicated expression, a smile appeared at the corner of Cheng Xiao's mouth. Du Gubo's eyes were slightly distracted and he remained silent. Yi Lingling's slightly raised eyelashes flashed, and there was a hint of envy in her eyes when she looked at Cheng Xiao. He knew so much. Suddenly, Yi Lingling thought of something, her pretty face turned red, and her blurred eyes became shy, moved away. Du Guyan was even more shocked, his throat was dry, and his anger towards Cheng Xiao completely disappeared at this moment. Instead, there was a complex emotion growing in his heart. For a long time, Cheng Xiao failed to wait for Du Gubo's response. In desperation, Cheng Xiao had no choice but to look at Yi Renxin for help. Yi Renxin glanced at her old friend and said to the three of them, "It's getting late today. You can go and have some rest. I will take you there another day, don't worry." After receiving Yi Renxin's promise, Cheng Xiao breathed a sigh of relief and did not bother. Under the leadership of Du Guyan, he went to the guest room prepared for him. In the living room, two old men looked at each other in silence. After a while, Yi Renxin's voice sounded. "What do you think of this kid? What do you think of this kid?" Yi Renxin's voice sounded. Du Gubo opened his mouth, but in the end, for some unknown reason, no sound came out. After a long time, he frowned and organized his words. "How should I put it, this kid? There is something evil. He is obviously not old, but he speaks like an adult. People, occasionally they have a bit of youthful spirit, but they seem to be intentional." Careful, Yi Renxin nodded in agreement and commented. In addition, he should have concealed his strength. Du Gubo's eyes narrowed slightly, remembering Cheng Xiao's ability to withstand his own pressure. He had already raised his pressure to almost 32 levels, but failed to make him lower his head. Even the last moment was more relaxed than before, and nothing felt right no matter how much I thought about it. If that boy hadn't been brought here by an old friend to treat him, he would have wanted to find out. Well, he has a lot of secrets. Yi Renxin thought of the extremely complete meridian theory spoken by Cheng Xiao. This was not like something that an ordinary family could study, but more like a theoretical family with a long tradition. Where did you meet such a boy? Du Gubo was curious. Well, it's a coincidence. Yi Renxin recalled the encounter during the day. It's also possible that he saw my identity and deliberately made friends with me. Du Gubo frowned. At their level, it would be difficult for them to have a good impression of anyone who approached them deliberately. I don't know why my old friend brought him to his mansion. However, it is not offensive. Seeing Du Gubo's expression, Yi Renxin smiled and persuaded, "You don't have to be so concerned. If it weren't for him, even if I could temporarily cure your poison, your soul power would be lost. To be promoted. Speaking of which, you still have to thank him. Juxin Haitang's cure can remove the toxins in Du Gubo's body, but it cannot redirect the toxins back into his martial soul, and naturally cannot increase his soul power." Du Gubo nodded. "Well, that's true. I owe him a favor. I can understand why he deliberately made friends. He has secrets, such as a child holding gold, so he naturally wants to seek shelter. His temperament is not bad, and he can't find too many faults in his behavior. I just don't know what level his soul power is. I'm afraid the innate level he mentioned was just to cover it up, so I have to think of a way to test it." At the end of his words, Yi Renxin's voice became smaller and smaller, and his vision gradually became scattered, as if he was thinking about something. Du Gubo teased. "You don't want to accept him as your grandson-in-law, do you?" "Haha, grandson-in-law. I'm afraid I don't have the time. If you have an idea, you can try it." Yi Renxin sighed. "The age difference between them is inappropriate." Du Gubo smiled and shook his head. In fact, he didn't care about age, it was just an excuse. Although the young man showed some special qualities, it was not enough for him to get his granddaughter in. It was enough to owe him a favor, and the title Douluo's favor was enough to repay the favor of this treatment. Suddenly, Du Gubo's mind moved and he seemed to remember something. "What do you mean you don't have time?" "Literally," Yi Renxin sighed. "I'm afraid I won't live long, only these 3 months." "How could it be?" Du Gubo's expression changed drastically. No wonder Yi Renxin remained silent when he mentioned seeking treatment from Yi Renxin again. "Can't Juxin Begonia be cured? It's not that I was injured and poisoned, but that my lifespan is about to end. I can feel that my energy and blood are weakening. Contra can theoretically live for 120 years, but this is only the best-case scenario. Over the years, I have traveled all over the world, and I have suffered again and again. Due to the pain of losing a child, my energy is no longer what it used to be. During this period, I feel that my physical condition is declining every day, and I have a hunch. I don't have much time left." Du Gubo's body trembled, and his shoulders immediately slumped. His old friend was about to pass away, which was also a big blow to him. He didn't have many friends to begin with. When he was young, he met Yi Renxin due to a detoxification accident, and they became friends with him from then on. Over the years, although the two have met very rarely, they still frequently exchange letters and have never broken off contact. Now that he suddenly heard that his friend was about to die soon, he felt mixed emotions. Is there no other way? Yes, break through the title Douluo. When Douluo heard this, he immediately cursed angrily. How long has it been, and you still have the intention to make a joke? If you break through the title Douluo, your lifespan can be extended a lot. But the auxiliary type titled Douluo, he had never heard of it. This continent does not seem to favor the auxiliary system. Whether it is the 7-treasure glazed tile pagoda, which is known as the first auxiliary system in the mainland, or other food systems and healing systems, I have never heard of an auxiliary system soul master who can break through the title Douluo. Yi Renshin wants to break through the title Douluo, but even Douluo finds it impossible. Yi Renshin laughed loudly and seemed to be quite carefree and unconcerned about the approaching death. It's not that there is no other way, but I'm not sure whether it can be done. It still depends on that kid's unique skills. You mean? Douluo recalled the conversation between Yi Renshin and Cheng Xiao after his treatment. It's late, go to bed early. Yi Renshin stopped chatting and stood up to summon his servants. Under the leadership of his servants, he went to the guest room prepared for him. Douluo didn't move, his expression changed. After weighing in his mind for a long time, he made a decision. The next day, Cheng Xiao got up early to practice boxing as usual and came to the courtyard to practice Tai Chi. Yawn. Douluo yawned and went downstairs. She was wearing a pair of light satin pajamas, and her smooth long legs were looming as she walked. She is much older than Cheng Xiao and Yi Lingling, and her figure is also taller. Although she is not as hot as the Zhu sisters, her round thighs are quite slender, and her fair skin is even more impressive under the cover of her pajamas. People are full of daydreams. Wu Ma, is breakfast ready? I'm hungry. Douluo shouted. Wait a moment, miss. It will be fine soon. Douluo sat boredly at the dining table, twisting his neck that was stiff due to his sleeping position. Suddenly, a figure outside the window broke into his sight. Douluo raised his head and looked up. Where he looked, he saw Cheng Xiao weakly performing strange punches with no strength at all. So early, what kind of punch did you use? It's so soft. How can it be effective? Douluo muttered. After all, it was because she was still young. Although the story she heard yesterday was a bit shocking to her, after digesting it for a night, she no longer cared much about it. At this time, Douluo thought of the way Cheng Xiao ignored her yesterday, so she no longer resented him, but she felt a sense of rivalry. Turning her beautiful eyes slightly, Douluo went upstairs, changed her clothes, and then went downstairs again. Hey, your training is so weak that it's useless at all. For the sake of helping my grandpa treat you yesterday, let me teach you. Before Cheng Xiao could react, Shangfeng came from the shop. The fragrance is faint and seems to have a fatal attraction, making people a little greedy. But Cheng Xiao was not distracted by this. Instead, alarm bells rang in his heart. He suddenly turned around and saw Douluo standing not far behind him with a smile. There was still some distance between the two of them, but Douluo suddenly raised his leg and kicked him from the side. Cheng Xiao was quite surprised. Could he hit this distance? The legs are so long. Boom. Cheng Xiao didn't expect that the legs wrapped under the skirt would be so slender. He thought he couldn't be kicked, but when the tight calves reached his ears, Cheng Xiao was shocked and realized that his prediction was wrong. He quickly used an emergency side block to block Douluo's kick. Tai Chi is running, and the soul power flows along the meridians to the hands. After a soft soul power sticks to Douluo's ankle, Cheng urinates and retreats suddenly. Whoosh! Cheng Xiao pulled quickly, but the force in his hand kept sticking to Douluo's ankle, like an invisible chain, tightly wrapped around Douluo's leg. Since he suddenly understood the principles of Tai Chi last time, Cheng Xiao no longer needs to stick to one move or another. Every palm and every punch of his can be moved according to his heart, switching between hard and soft, and his soul power is even more intense. Under his control, there is a distinction between yin and yang. Soft and sticky, he can draw anyone close to him at any time by relying on this soul power, and he can also remove other people's strength at will. Jianjin is fierce and domineering, and can even directly tear apart even soul power attacks. The intersection of yin and yang, the combination of hardness and softness, the two merge into one, swallowing and vomiting together, can even break the body-protecting soul skills. Tear. Chang Xiao clenched her palms into claws and pulled hard. Du Guyan was shocked. She felt an invisible force at her ankles. Before she could even close her legs, he pulled her forward. Du Guyan exclaimed, unable to steady his body, and pulled out a very standard one-word horse. What's this? The white and smooth thighs were exposed from the side of the skirt. Chang Xiao had no clear understanding of Du Guyan's leg length before, but it was not until this time that Chang Xiao had a more intuitive feeling for Du Guyan's long legs. I saw that the one-word horse that Du Guyan tore out was almost 2 meters long, and Du Guyan's height was only just over 1.7 meters. These long legs were extremely close to the golden ratio. They were hidden under the skirt before, but they were not visible at all. Come out. The legs are round and tight, as if there is no trace of fat, and they look extremely perfect. 1 point more will make you look fat, and 1 point less will make you too skinny. The ankles are slender, the lotus root toes are as tender and small as cardamom, and the smooth skin is as delicate as satin. What did you do? Du Guyan gritted his teeth, quickly pulled up his skirt to cover his round thighs, and glared at him viciously. You slipped on your own, blame me. Chang Xiao shrugged. You little liar. Du Guyan was secretly annoyed. Yesterday, this little liar said that his soul power was not strong and he was only at the first level of innateness. How could that reaction just now be expected of a first-level kid? I originally thought that he was indifferent to me yesterday, so I wanted to teach him a lesson so that he would not dare to ignore me again in the future. But he didn't expect that he would suffer the loss during a face-to-face meeting. He used to teach his classmates this way in school, and he quickly became the eldest sister of Tiando Royal Academy, whom no one dared to offend. She always believed that disobedient brats would become obedient if they were taught a lesson. But unexpectedly, he actually capsized in the gutter. Possessed by the martial spirit, Du Guyan, who was usually a little arrogant, found it difficult to accept it for a moment. He bit his silver teeth lightly and released the martial spirit. 3 soul rings, 2 yellow and 1 purple, suddenly appeared under him, and a giant green snake appeared wrapped around Du Guyan, and then merged into Du Guyan's body. Du Guyan's green pupils became even deeper. 2 yellow ones light up in sequence. The 3 soul skills are all phosphorus snake venom. The first 2 are phosphorus red poison and phosphorus blue poison. Biphosphorus red poison is an excitatory toxin that can stimulate the human body's nerves and increase attack power and speed by 20% respectively. Phosphorus blue poison is a paralyzing toxin that can eliminate pain and increase defense by 30%. Du Guyan suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Chang Xiao in an instant, slashing at Chang Xiao's neck with his palm. But Chang Xiao just turned his head and turned around, and Du Guyan was lifted away by a strange force. Du Guyan staggered back and barely managed to steady his body. When he looked up, he saw Chang Xiao standing there easily, without even using his martial spirit, as if it was easy to deal with her. Seeing the indifferent chuckle on Chang Xiao's face, Du Guyan only felt that this beautiful cheek deserved a beating. Du Guyan gritted her teeth, and she couldn't calm down unless she put some color on this face. Du Guyan would not give in, speeding up, rushing to Chang Xiao, and fighting with him, but no matter how she attacked or how tricky the angle was, there was an inexplicable force that changed her offensive and could not land at all. On Chang Xiao. It's that weird power again. Du Guyan's expression changed, and she finally realized something was wrong, and retreated continuously. Don't get close. The third soul skill, Jade Phosphorus and Purple Poison. Close black lens bracket. This is the only attack skill among her 3 soul skills. It is a pure poison. The poisoned person will be unable to move and gradually rot. She was forced to panic, and she couldn't care too much. Anyway, with Grandpa Yi here, no one could die. She must give him some color today. Du Guyan had completely forgotten her original intention. She had a competitive spirit that was hard to vent in her heart. At this moment, she only thought about winning. Purple poisonous mist enveloped him. Chang Xiao's eyes narrowed, and he instinctively wanted to use his martial soul to defend himself, but thinking of where he was at this moment, he quickly gave up the idea, and with a thought, he had an idea. The soul power of his left hand was unparalleled, and the soul power of his right hand was as soft as water. With the cooperation of the two, Cheng Xiao used his palms to force the poisonous mist away, and actually formed a wind pressure all over his body, rolled up the purple poisonous mist, and gathered it in the palm of his hand. Among the poisonous mist that is enough to rot the body is like a ball of cotton, which can be flattened and rounded in Cheng Xiao's hands. Disperse. Cheng Xiao's eyes narrowed, and he shouted in his heart. His palms suddenly became claws, and he suddenly tore apart the soul power mixed with the poisonous mist in his palms. Boom! With a low roar, the ball of poisonous mist in his hand exploded suddenly, and was thrown out by Cheng Xiao's tail, but his body was not contaminated at all. How is that possible? Du Guyan was shocked when she saw that Cheng Xiao was playing with her soul skills at will using unknown methods. Come here you go. Cheng Xiaoshu shook his hand, and Du Guyan flew towards Cheng Xiao with a cry of surprise, like a kite with its string cut off. Boom! Cheng Xiao gently struck Du Guyan's flat belly with a gentle palm, as if there was no fat at all. In the next moment, Du Guyan flew out upside down. Boom! Under this soft palm, the tall and delicate figure hit the courtyard wall with terrifying force. If it was hit hard, it would inevitably cause injuries to the muscles and bones. Shua! A green figure suddenly appeared, blowing up a hurricane and stopping Du Guyan just as he was about to hit the wall. In the courtyard, the two of them fought. Upstairs, two old men watched from the window with lowered eyebrows. Which one of them do you think will win? Yi Renxin tapped her fingers on the window sill rhythmically. Well, it should be Yan Yan. She is already a soul master. This kid is only 11 years old. No matter how talented he is, he should not be an opponent. Du Gubo said casually, without putting the fight between the two below in the eyes. To him, the fight between Cheng Xiao and Du Guyan was no different than playing house. Very boring. Yi Renxin nodded, his view was the same as Du Gubo's. Suddenly, the careless expressions of the two suddenly became serious, and their wandering eyes suddenly converged below. At this time, Du Guyan had been pulled out by Cheng Xiao, but Cheng Xiao himself was in a position far away from Du Guyan. The two looked at each other in disbelief. Impossible. Look again. The two of them looked much more serious, watching the fight between the two men in the courtyard intently. Du Guyan released his martial soul and used his first and second soul skills, but he still couldn't get close. It was as if there was an inexplicable force controlling Du Guyan's figure, and even his strength could remove it. Du Gubo and Yi Renxin's eyes were so vicious that they could see the secret at a glance. It was clearly Cheng Xiao's soul power. Self-created soul skills, Yi Renxin said in a deep voice with focused eyes. Both of them had a bit of shock on their faces. This kid is only 11 years old, but he can use his own soul skills. This is something that can only be accomplished after you have reached a certain level of experience, age, and strength, and have a deeper understanding of soul power. Because you cannot rely on soul rings to release soul skills, you need to control soul power to an extremely subtle level, which is difficult for low-level soul masters to do. There are no exceptions. I heard that there was a young man from Kamikaze Academy who was born with soul power. He was obsessed with self-created soul skills and wasted a lot of time in training. However, he actually developed some skills. Could it be that this kid worked hard to create his own soul skills because his innate soul power was too low? He actually has such a talent. Du Gubo couldn't believe it. This kid was much younger than his granddaughter. Isn't this a bit unreasonable for his good understanding? Oops, Yan Yan's third soul skill can corrode the body. Suddenly, Du Gubo's expression changed. He opened the window and was about to jump down to stop him, but he didn't want to stretch out a hand and stop him. Wait a minute, I'm here, what are you afraid of? 2. Boom. Cheng Xiao glued the poisonous mist together, then tore it into pieces and threw it out while the two of them watched. Hey, this kid, this self-created soul skill. Du Gubo looked surprised. In fact, Du Guyan's third soul skill was not enough in his eyes. The soul rings of the same year were used by titled Douluo and Soul Master. The power is completely different. If Du Gubo was confident that he could use it by himself, Cheng Xiao would never be able to do it to this extent. But despite this, a 1,000-year soul ring is a qualitative change compared to a century-old soul ring. That boy's self-created soul skills can so easily dissolve the green phosphorus and purple poison into the invisible. It is really a bit unbelievable. There was a solemn look between his eyebrows. Douluo was no longer as contemptuous as before, and instead stared at the thin figure intently. This kid is quite interesting. The doctrine of its own school, the knowledge base inadvertently revealed in the words, the hidden soul power level, the self-created soul skills. The first three are not enough for Douluo to take seriously, but the self-created soul skills are enough to show that Cheng Xiao's understanding is definitely not comparable to ordinary geniuses. He had to cheer up a bit. Ah! Douluo exclaimed, and was grabbed by Cheng Xiao from behind, pulled in front of him, and then knocked away with his palm and smashed towards the courtyard wall. Whoosh! Douluo's expression changed and he suddenly disappeared. The window creaked and flapped back and forth. The next moment, Douluo appeared in the courtyard. With a move of his hand, he caught Douluo, who flew upside down. Yi Ren was helpless. With him here, why bother to intervene in the quarrels between the juniors and let them solve it themselves? Afraid that Douluo would be offended, Yi Renxin also came to the courtyard, used his martial arts spirit to check the bodies of the two juniors, and found that they were all fine. Seeing the end of the two old men, Cheng Xiao took back his soul power and bowed his hands to them as a salute. Your Majesty, old sir. HMPH. Douluo snorted coldly, but ignored him. Cheng Xiao was very helpless when he saw this. It was obviously your granddaughter who was causing trouble for me. Yi Renxin smiled and shook his head gently towards Cheng Xiao, saying that it didn't matter if he was there. Cheng Xiao was relieved. Grandfather. Douluo was a little surprised, but soon her charming face fell down, and she actually asked her grandfather to help her. Stubborn, Douluo gritted his teeth and decided to fight again. Little liar, continue. Okay, Yan, you lose. Douluo's face was solemn. I didn't. Douluo looked anxious and wanted to argue. Douluo sighed softly and pointed at the courtyard wall behind Douluo. See for yourself. If he hadn't been merciful, this soul power would have exploded in your body, and your internal organs would have been injured, and you would have lost. Douluo turned his head and looked, his pupils suddenly trembled. He saw a hole the size of his head appeared in the courtyard wall behind him, directly piercing the courtyard wall. The state of possession by the martial spirit was lifted, and the three spirit rings disappeared one by one. Douluo's face was stunned, and he lowered his eyes dejectedly. For a moment, he couldn't believe that his majestic soul could dare to be defeated so inexplicably, and the opponent didn't even use his martial soul. Seeing that his granddaughter was so hurt, Douluo couldn't bear it and wanted to comfort her, but then he thought, it would be better to let her reflect, so as not to become arrogant and look up to the sky. You brat, my wall. Repair it. Douluo pointed at the courtyard wall angrily. His granddaughter's skills were inferior to others, so he couldn't say anything, so he could only vent his dissatisfaction like this. Cheng Xiao smiled and cupped his hands. This is natural. I will hire someone to fix it today. Humph. Douluo glared at his old friend. What? Are you afraid that I will bully this kid? Yi Renxin smiled and said nothing. You old man, I don't know you yet. Boy, come in with us, I have something to tell you. How could Douluo not know what Yi Ren was thinking? He waved his sleeves angrily and entered the room cursing. Several people entered the room together. Yi Renxin stopped and said to Douluo, Yan, go check how long breakfast is left and call Lingling by the way. This girl is too lazy and is still sleeping in. Douluo was in a low mood, responded dully, and went upstairs. Cheng Xiao, led by Yi Renxin, came to a guest room and saw Douluo sitting on a chair with a gloomy face and an unhappy look on his face. The corners of Cheng Xiao's mouth twitched. As for, okay, what are you trying to do with this junior? Yi Renxin sat down beside him and said helplessly. It's not your granddaughter who is being bullied. Douluo rolled his eyes. But he also knew that it was a bit too cheap for him, a mighty titled Douluo, to lose his temper with a junior over such a trivial matter. Thinking of this, Douluo lost his temper, his face became slightly brighter, and he said, Boy, it was too late yesterday and I didn't have time. I came to you today because I have something to talk to you about. You also played a role in yesterday's diagnosis and treatment. I, as a dignified titled Douluo, I will naturally not allow you to come here in vain, so now I will give you two choices. Now I give you two choices. Douluo stretched out a finger. First, I owe you a favor. You can ask me to do something for you at any time. Of course, it must be something I can do first. Chang Xiao nodded, said nothing, and waited quietly. Second, I accept you as my disciple. From now on, you will be my Douluo's disciple. No one will dare to bully you in the future. You can rest assured in Tiando City and no longer have to hide in the camp. But there is a requirement. You need to the science of meridians taught this old friend of mine to prolong his life. This is the only thing Douluo can do for his friend after thinking about it for a long time yesterday. He is definitely not willing to let a granddaughter hook up with him, but it is not impossible to accept a disciple. This kid deliberately makes friends with big shots. He understands the little tricks. With his status and strength as a titled Douluo, he can protect him. Originally, he was reluctant. With this kid's innate soul power, this so-called apprenticeship was just a formality and could not achieve much. It was purely to protect him for the rest of his life with his reputation as Poison Douluo. But in order for his old friend to live longer, he reluctantly accepted a registered disciple. But today, when he saw this kid actually displaying a self-created soul skill that was enough to defeat his granddaughter, Douluo was a little surprised. He didn't expect that this kid was still a treasure from the ocean. On a sudden impulse, the registered disciple removed the word, named, from his words. Chang Xiao was stunned. He had never thought of becoming a disciple of Douluo. After all, in his plan, the only thing that could come into contact with Douluo was the fairy grass in the eyes of Bingwo Liangyi. He originally planned to leave after fishing for the jelly grass. I never thought about becoming a disciple. What are you talking about? Before Chang Xiao could answer, Yi Renxin said displeased ly, if you fancy this kid's talent, don't use me as a cover-up. Douluo's words made him seem like a different person inside and out, as if he coveted the Chang Xiao family's unique skills. Yi Renxin had a flawless life, but it would not be worthwhile if he stained himself before his death. Turning his head and looking solemn, Yi Renxin said solemnly, little friend Chang, don't listen to this old guy's nonsense. He likes your talent and he can't help himself. If you want to become his teacher, you don't have to consider being old. You are pedantic and confused. Douluo yelled. Don't be too talkative. Seeing two old men who were nearly 200 years old quarreling, Chang Xiao couldn't laugh or cry. He quickly put his hands up and stopped. You two, listen to me. Whether I want to accept you as my teacher or not, this junior has already decided I have to leave this unique skill to the old gentleman. The two fell silent for a moment, becoming incompatible. They looked at each other for a while, then looked away. Douluo coughed twice. This guy is pretty good, I like him very much. Yi Renxin's face was complicated. With his temperament, he was unwilling to accept such a gift. After all, he was already old and had limited time to repay such a kindness. But he really couldn't let go of his obsession. For a moment, Yi Ren was in a dilemma and could only remain silent. Chang Xiaohei's eyes saw Yi Renxin's hesitation, and he said, Old sir, don't worry. I am not a healing soul master. I deeply believe that it can only exert its greatest value in the hands of a healing soul master. If you want to show kindness, let's do it big. Chang Xiao is not a stingy person. He wants to build a good relationship and is picky, which will only make people look down on his petty attitude. What's more, it was unknown whether it could be combined with Juxin Haitang's soul power to create that kind of effect. He was too lazy to try it himself, so he might as well give it to Yi Renxin. Yi Renxin sighed. How do you repay this old man? Ha 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 ha, everyone is happy. It doesn't matter whether I repay or not. This guy will be my apprentice from now on. Repaying something is too unreasonable. Douluo patted his old friend on the shoulder, comforted him, and finally teased, you if you really feel sorry for him, marry your granddaughter to him, and our two families will be one family from now on. Your Majesty, I'm really sorry. This junior knows that he is not talented enough. If I ask you to be my teacher, I might dishonor your reputation. Therefore, I choose the first one. Ha 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 ha, ga cough cough cough. Douluo's laughter turned into a duck's cry, and he accidentally choked and coughed repeatedly. He finally stopped, his face turned red, he glared at Chang Xiao fiercely, gritted his teeth and said, what did you say? Can you say that again? Is this kid out of his mind? Douluo couldn't believe it. He had the title of Douluo and wanted to accept him as his disciple, but he actually refused. Rejecting a titled Douluo. Do you know how valuable titled Douluo is? Even a pig would choose to become a disciple of a titled Douluo. Are you stupider than a pig? The flushed cheeks turned dark in an instant, and Douluo's eyelids jumped. Ever since this kid came to his home, he seemed to have never been comfortable with him, always getting frustrated with this brat. Wasn't this kid sent by Injuhuaguan just to piss him off? Douluo was very suspicious of Cheng Xiao's composition at this moment. Seeing that Douluo was already angry, Cheng Xiao was helpless, but refused to change his words, and said bravely, "Junior, choose the first one." In a short period of time, Cheng Xiao has carefully considered the pros and cons. This was not an impulsive move on his part. What he has to consider especially now is how to cover up the problem of the second 1,000-year soul ring. This is the top priority. There are many ways to solve this problem, and it is not impossible to become a disciple. But the first condition is that this person must be strong enough and able to stop the overt and covert attacks of all major forces. Titled Douluo's reputation is indeed enough. However, Douluo was not the best choice for apprenticeship. In terms of strength, among the titled Douluo, Douluo's strength is considered to be at the bottom. Although his poison can destroy the city instantly, there are many ways to resist high-end combat power. Without the poison, Douluo the strength will be greatly reduced. Let alone Ju Douluo, he was no match. Not to mention other super Douluo who are above level 95, he can't defeat any of the sword Douluo and bone Douluo. In terms of power, Douluo is a loner. If the Qibao Glazed Sect, Wahan Palace, or the Blue Lightning Overlord Dragon Sect are determined to touch him, Douluo can only protect himself, but it is impossible to protect him. In terms of personality, Douluo has a difficult temperament, is moody, and is a bit protective of his shortcomings. He is indeed difficult to get along with. Especially when he was still carrying the attached soul bone, he was really scared. If it was exposed, would Douluo cut off his own hand and snatch the soul bone to give to his granddaughter? He really didn't dare to get too close to Douluo before completely merging the external soul bone. No matter how you look at it, Douluo is not a good candidate for apprenticeship. In contrast, if it weren't for the inappropriate time and Yi Renxin's short life, he would be more willing to worship Yi Renxin as his teacher. Yi Renxin lived a decent life, made countless friends, and never offended anyone. Although he is only a healing soul master, he has a wide circle of friends, and many people are willing to give him a favor even when they have nothing to do with him. He also has a gentle personality and is not prone to anger, which is much better than getting along with Douluo. Although there are many differences in strength and power, there is one advantage that Douluo can never compare with, and that is appeal and influence. If he can rely on Yi Renxin, he can publish some theories and gain recognition from several major forces in a very short period of time, thus gaining a firm foothold in theory. Relying on Yi Renxin's reputation, there will never be anyone like Yu Shaogang who embezzles his theories. In this way, he would have a channel to speak out and publish his theories on how to increase the life of the soul ring, while also mixing in private information. In this case, his second soul ring, which had been exposed for another 1,000 years, would not be so eye-catching. I have verified my theory myself, and I have shown the theory to you. Whether you can do it or not is up to you. Everyone has the sunflower book. If you don't roll it, what does it have to do with me? I rolled it, you can do whatever you want. Of course, this is only one aspect, and it is still not enough to ensure his own safety. He needs stronger protection. As for how to obtain protection, that depends on the progress on Qian Runshui's side. Thorn Blood and Shilong are relatively easy to access, the hard version has Golden Crocodile, and the hell level difficulty is Qian Douluo. Oh, there is also a hidden mission, Qian Runshui's love story. As for the difficulty, it's hard to say. Love Brain is not for everyone, especially the 3 love brains are not very scientific. Cheng Xiao always suspected that the 2 old guys in the sky took advantage of the absence of the angel god to engage in secret operations and gave spiritual hints to the angel god exam. In any case, as long as he clears the difficult version, he will have the confidence to operate to ensure his own safety. If Qian Runshui's progress is not going well, he can rely on the Shui Qinghe line to establish a line with the Qibao Glazed Sect and examine their behavior. In addition, you can also contact Yu Tianeng to see Yu Yuanzhen's attitude. This was what he had thought before when he didn't know that Yi Renxin's death was approaching. Now, Chang Xiao was a little hesitant because he was not sure whether he could complete all the arrangements before Yi Renxin died. Now that he is blocked by Douluo Bo again, it may be impossible to become a disciple. Otherwise, you will really offend Douluo Bo. This is no joke. Just because Douluo Bo was at the bottom of the titled Douluo rankings, it didn't mean that he was a small, great soul master. What's the meaning? If you don't worship me as a titled Douluo, why don't you turn around and worship a contra? This is throwing the face of a titled Douluo to the ground and trampling on it. Okay. Douluo Bo said 3 words in a row, obviously very angry. If his old friend hadn't been here, he would have wanted to slap this kid and teach him what respecting the elderly and loving the young means. HMPH. The first one is the first one. After being insulted, Douluo Bo didn't want to stay any longer, otherwise he really didn't know where to put his face. He immediately stood up, fluttered his sleeves and walked away. He said a cruel word and disappeared into the guest room. Don't regret it. Don't come crying and begging me in the future. Upon seeing this, Chang Xiao quickly and cautiously moved half a step away, hunching his shoulders to get out of the way. He was afraid that Douluo Bo would get angry and slap him coldly, so it was better to stay away from him. Don't worry, that old guy just has a bad temper. If his temper subsides tomorrow, he won't worry about it anymore. Seeing Chang Xiao's actions, Yi Renxin couldn't laugh or cry. You said you don't want to do such a good thing and refuse it completely. I know I'm afraid. That's good. Chang Xiao was embarrassed. He was really afraid that Douluo Bo would poison him one day if things went wrong. It seemed that he had to get the Yushang Qiluo immortal as soon as possible. No matter what kind of poison he had, he couldn't get close to him. Well, in this case, I don't know how to thank you. Yi Renxin also knew that after such an experience, he would definitely not be able to accept him as his disciple. The words Douluo Bo left behind, "Come and beg me while crying," were clearly a sign of losing face, leaving a hole so that he could save face in the future. If he took Xiao Xiao as his disciple at this time, Douluo Bo would be so angry that he would not even want to meet his old friend. It doesn't matter. I don't expect the old gentleman to thank you for your thoughtfulness. If you really say that, you will offend this junior. I would rather not give you what I have learned. There is nothing better than favor. Chang Xiao is not stupid. Physical objects have a price, but favors are priceless. If Chang Xiao really has something to ask of Yi Renxin later, Yi Renxin will be willing to lend a hand to help him no matter how big the matter is. If Yi Renxin really offered any benefits to settle the matter now, Chang Xiao would probably shout in his heart that this business was a loss to his grandma's family. Yi Renxin nodded at him, shook his head helplessly, and then pondered for a long time. A flash of inspiration flashed in his mind. Somehow, he remembered Douluo Bo's words, "Marry your granddaughter to him," and his heart couldn't help but move. Maybe can. How about this? After today, I will buy a mansion to live in. If you are willing, call me Grandpa Yi. Ling Ling doesn't have many companions around her, so you can move in with us and take care of her more. How about it? Yi Renxin suggested. Chang Xiao suddenly raised his head and was shocked. He obviously didn't expect that Yi Renxin would be so generous. This sentence may seem like nothing, but if ordinary people heard it, they might even mock it, saying that he is even stingier than Douluo Bo. He doesn't think of anything, so he can just change his name and be done with it. I want to have for free. However, Chang Xiao could hear the hidden meaning. The change of title is enough to show that Yi Renxin is willing to regard Chang Xiao as his junior, and does not want to think about who can call him grandpa. Only Douluo Bo's granddaughter Douluo Yan is qualified. Perhaps for Ning Fengji's sake, Ning Rongrong also had this qualification. Other people. Hey, do you think Yi Renxin pays attention to it? He doesn't care much about Shui Qinghe, which shows Yi Renxin's arrogance. In addition, Yi Renxin also allowed him to live in his own home, which shows that he is sincere and not just pretending. More importantly, the last sentence, "take care of you," has a profound meaning. This can be called an act of entrustment. You know, Yi Renxin's death is approaching, and he doesn't have much time to live. He lives with his family and takes care of his granddaughter. Doesn't that mean something? Apprenticeship. How could apprenticeship be as good as this treatment? Grandpa Yi. Almost instantly, Chang Xiao blurted out the idea clearly. Ha 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 ha, okay, okay, okay. Another 3 consecutive greetings, but the meaning was completely opposite to Douluo Bo's. Yi Renxin laughed heartily and was very satisfied with Chang Xiao's grandpa. Okay, school starts tomorrow, go and get ready. After school starts, move here. After a long time, Yi Renxin let out a long breath and said, yes, I'll get ready right now. The relationship has become closer, and Chang Xiao no longer refers to him as a junior. Looking at Chang Xiao's back, Yi Renxin felt 100 times better than before for some reason. He touched his beard and nodded gently. Although the contact time was short, he was quite satisfied with Chang Xiao. Don't be arrogant or shy in dealing with others, be thoughtful, act cautiously, and be knowledgeable. With such a child accompanying his granddaughter, he thought that after his death, and with Douluo Bo taking care of him, his granddaughter would definitely not be bullied. More importantly, it also paves the way for this child in the future. Otherwise, there is no telling what the old guy Douluo Bo will do when he gets angry. With his own relationship, Douluo Bo would still help him no matter how hard he tried to save his face. As for the grandson-in-law, he didn't think that far ahead. His granddaughter was still young and there was no need to make a hasty decision. Whether the two of them can get to that point depends on what Lingling wants in the future. As a grandfather, he has loved her all his life, and it is impossible for him to force her to die. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.